Good evening. This is Brian Waller, Board of Appeals Chairman, Zoning Board of Appeals Chairman. We'll start by confirming that folks online can hear and be heard. Mr. Langevin?
Present.
Thank you. Good evening. It is 7:10 p.m. This open meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted both remotely and in person, consistent with the extension of the open meeting protocols allowing hybrid meetings through March 31st, 2020, or I think June 30th, 2027. This meeting is convening via Zoom video conference and in person, as posted on the meeting agenda, which can be found on the Town of Grafton website. Please see the agenda for details on how to participate remotely. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. All participation will be visible to others, will be recorded, and may be viewed later. Anything you share will be recorded and viewable. This meeting may feature public comment. Anyone that's attending virtually, if you'd like to request acknowledgement to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And the meeting administrator will enable you to speak when it's your turn. Anyone on the phone, our staff will assist you with enabling you to speak. Anyone in person, we ask you to step up to the podium, and all speakers, please state your name and address prior to your comments or questions. And all votes taken this evening will be done on a roll call vote. So the first item on the agenda, we'll start with Snow Road, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Kokosko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at our last meeting, I think there was a lot of things that we were looking to have the applicant provide, and I guess I'll just turn it over at this point to the applicant, and you can give us an update on what's new, what you've...
Okay, for the record, John Grenier, J.M. Grenier Associates. I'm here with Cohen Babcock and Stephen Bencasa, who are the developers for and proponents for the project. Since our last meeting, what we have done is to look to address all of the on-site comments, whether it's regarding maneuvering around the sites, accessibility, grading, addressing stormwater treatment, and everything to do with on-site layout and how it actually functions, as well as off-site, in particular with the addition of a right turn lane that would go from Snow Road onto Route 122. So with that, I can start with the modifications that we did to the layout. And do you want to put that up on the...
She's gonna let me screen share, right?
Hold on. Oh, you should be able to check. Because you got update. I did get you on as a panelist, so you should be able to share.
Where do I do that?
On the
Down on the bottom, go down to where it says share. There's a green arrow. Does it not
Can you
have?
enlarge this? Go there.
He has a raised hand.
Yeah, his version of Zoom doesn't have this.
Okay.
It's strange.
I can go in. You just tell me what you want me to show.
All right, if you want to go to the site plan set, and I believe it's sheet 4, C4.
C4.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, starting with the townhouses that are along Snow Road, originally, we had townhouses that were accessed, they are accessed from the interior of the site, but the location of them, in some locations, they were closer to Snow Road, and I believe in one closest unit initially was about 18 feet off of Snow Road. What we did was we shifted the location of those units further away from Snow Road, so they're approximately 30 feet. I think the closest one is 29.2 feet, so approximately 30 feet off of Snow Road at the closest point. And I'd point out that in this, for the residential yard setbacks in this zoning district, the minimum front yard setback is 30 feet. So it's in compliance with other residential structures that are within the residential zoning district. We also added a sidewalk that would meander along the frontage, on both sides of the entranceway, and then that would tie into the existing sidewalk that is located on in the Maxwell Drive area that goes down towards Route 122. So that would allow us, one, to have good site triangle visual along the frontage for any vehicles pulling out of the project, as well as have good capabilities for landscaping along that front yard setback area. Moving into the site, we are, as you can see, we have quite a network of internal sidewalks that provide access from all of the buildings throughout that quad area over to the clubhouse, as well as in the rear buildings, we have crosswalks that again tie into that sidewalk network that it goes all the way around the quad, and then we have concrete sidewalks that traverse through the center portion of that quad. Then moving to the southerly portion of the site, in the southeasterly portion, we have a dedicated compactor and recycling dumpster area that's adjacent to the parking aisles at the rear portion of the site in front of what's shown as building 2. So we have a dedicated area that we have good access for the trash trucks to be able to load and unload, the compactors, as well as the recycling dumpsters in that area. And we'll get into it in just a little bit. Cohen has a PowerPoint presentation on how the compactor and dumpsters will function, as well as their capacities and how, in terms of when they're going to have to be serviced and that. So we'll be getting into that in just a little bit. We also have implemented for our crosswalks, 8-foot wide crosswalks in key locations throughout the site, so that going from different sidewalks across the driving aisles, we have adequate areas and locations for crosswalks throughout the site. At the entranceway just to the south of the clubhouse, we do have a wayfinding sign, so when people pull into the site, there'll be a sign there that'll give direction to which buildings and locations, so that people aren't floundering around, driving in circles, trying to find which unit is which or which building is which. We'll have a wayfinding site there. We also have, for anybody who's going northerly heading towards the exit, we have a stop sign there so that they can stop. If anybody's coming into the site, they can make sure that it's safe to go, and then they could proceed and take a left to the exit out onto Snow Road. So I think that's the main points regarding the layout that were updated, and we went through the traffic engineer's comments, and we have a response letter that goes through item by item how we've addressed those, but those were I think the biggest items that we've addressed. If you go to the next sheet, Katrina. In terms of the site grading, and drainage. The biggest items, what we have done is if you look along the northerly property line, there was a comment from Graves Engineering initially that there is in the northwest portion of the site, there is currently an area that impounds. It takes water from some of the properties to the north and it impounds in there. What we have done is incorporated a water quality swale that runs from west to east along the northerly property line. That will make sure that any water that is flowing onto the site will be able to drain to the east heading towards our basin. We are also capturing all of our stormwater from the impervious paved surfaces. That is being routed into that water quality swale and then going into some sediment forebays before going into an infiltration basin. What that allows us to do is because of that water quality swale, we can drastically improve the water quality prior to any water being discharged off of site. So I know we had some conversations at one of the earlier meetings where DEP stormwater management guidelines say that they want to have 80% TSS removal for stormwater. By implementing a longer traverse and through some water quality swales and forebays before it goes into the basin, we can drastically improve the treatment of the water, any of the stormwater that comes off of the impervious surfaces. In addition to that, for each of the buildings, including the clubhouse, you'll see on there those kind of grid-like rectangular areas. We're capturing runoff from each one of those structures and we're recharging that into the ground. So we're taking the clean roof runoff and that takes pressure off of the basin. It also isolates a lot of the clean water so that can go straight into the ground. So that helps to spread the recharge of the water throughout the site so it's not just relying directly on an infiltration basin for recharge to groundwater, and we're recharging all of that clean water. And we have the calculations that we had submitted that demonstrate that. Next, we do have, I think it's the last sheet in the set, Katrina, is a landscape plan.
Second to last.
Is it second to?
The turning on the
Oh, I'm sorry. Right there. We have a landscape plan that was submitted, and again, that shows that we're introducing landscaping along the street view of Snow Road in front of the townhouse units. To the north side, adjacent to Snow Road, we have evergreens in that area. That is one of our closest abutters, who's just directly to the north of us on Snow Road. And then we have evergreens that will traverse along that northerly property line for the full length to any of the butters that are to the north of us. The same is true if you pan down to the south side of the site. There's number 8 Snow Road. We have evergreens that are going to be proposed along that property line. And then beyond that, just to the south of us, that's all Stop and Shop Plaza. So we do have the garages that do go along there. Although we don't need the screening, it is a visual screen within the site. So we've looked at making sure that we have good screening for the abutters. And then after this, a little bit part of our presentation, I know that we did talk directly to some of the abutters. And we have worked with them to make sure that we're addressing some of their concerns as well. And Cohen can bring you up to speed on that. So now looking off-site, if you want to go to the next sheet, here is the intersection of Snow Road and 122. as you can see right there, that's existing condition. There's one lane that goes from Snow Road onto 122. Everybody knows that's at an awkward angle. It's not ideal. So what we have done, if you go to the next sheet, is we've introduced a right turn only lane. And what we did was we have a 12-foot wide right turn only lane. We are going to replace the sidewalk that is adjacent to that ties into the sidewalk that runs to the north along 122. We had a meeting with the Grafton Affordable Housing Board. Their office is actually on Maxwell Drive, so we walked the site with them. We also went directly in front of their board at a meeting, and they voted unanimously in support to work with us because we will have some work that will be on their property, particularly at that where that triangle area is, because their property line comes into the Snow Road and 122 right away at a point. So we will need to do a rounding there, and then to replace that sidewalk, there will be some work just over the Snow Road right-of-way property line within their property. So we went through all of the items that would need to be improved to make this happen, to improve that intersection. And again, they voted unanimously in support of working with us to incorporate these improvements to Snow Road.
We'll also,
Go ahead.
DHCD, we're working with them now, and they're the ones that are gonna have to.
Yes, so there'll be, the property is actually owned by the state through DHCD, so they have their contacts at DHCD that they work with. So we're gonna work with them. They've signed off on it through a vote, and we'll be working with them in DHCD to make sure that however they want to implement the ownership or easements or however that is, we'll go through that process. But again, they're fully on board and they're in support of both the project and the improvements that we're making to Snow Road. And in fact, they said that it would probably help any traffic coming out of their site, because having that right-hand turn lane, that would help to alleviate the traffic that tends to back up on Snow Road currently. So we had that meeting, what was it, last Monday or Tuesday? Last Tuesday. So they formally voted on that. So it was a very good meeting. We're very happy with that.
We're also making other changes to their landscaping and such.
Yes,
Gone
yeah,
through
we
that,
went
some
through,
of
they
that.
have some trees that are nuisance trees, and they have some other things on site. They have a couple of benches that we're gonna remove and replace, and then since we're replacing some benches, they want them to be consistent with other ones, so we'll be doing some other items for them as part of that. So again, it was a good meeting, and it was a good result. Now, let me just check my notes. I want to make sure I'm covering everything. We did talk to the fire department. They gave us the specifications for their ladder truck, and we have implemented the standards. Actually, the truck that they have standard truck sizes in our software, and the truck that we implemented is wheelbase. Everything is similar. Actually, it's a little bit longer. It's a bigger truck, and we provided a turning analysis through the site to demonstrate that what's actually a bigger truck than what the Grafton Fire Department has will traverse through the site smoothly and doesn't have any issues. So we dotted that I, crossed that T.
There are comments from the fire department regarding that.
Okay, good.
Have you seen those?
I have not.
Okay,
I
'cause
have
they
not.
don't think you did it right.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, if
They undotted your I's and uncrossed your T's.
Again. I will have to take a look at that because I do have the sizing of our truck and it was longer than their truck, but we'll address it.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work. I'm not overly concerned about that, but we'll make it work. I think that covers all the big topic items. Oh, do you want to go through the
Trash compactor.
the trash
Yeah,
compactor?
you wanna pull up the trash compactor PDF, please?
Yeah, hold on. On your townhouse final clubhouse. Which one's the trash compactor video?
You have the,
Um,
that's not a
Or is
video,
it just
not a-
the
It's a
PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah.
The snow road mechanical
yeah.
trash.
Yep.
We'll do that next. There we go.
Alright, so, there was some questions about the trash compactor, the capacity, level of service, what the hydraulic fluid used would be and things of that nature. So what I did was I put together a PowerPoint. So the compactor we'd be using would be the RJ250SC. This was specified from the contract waste services that we use, company that we use. We gave him the amount of bedrooms, number of units, and that's what they specified for the level of service needed for that many units and that many bedrooms. So essentially it's a 34-yard mechanical trash compactor. 1 cubic yard of compacted trash is 500 to 600 pounds. The compactor is a 17 to 20,000 pound compacted capacity. 4.9 pounds of solid waste per person per day, 32% of which is recycled, per the US EPA statistics, which was confirmed with the trash vendor as well. So for 432 bedrooms, 224 apartment units with 12 townhomes, that's 1,439 pounds of waste per day, which is a 12 to 14 day capacity and would be picked up bi-weekly for the compactor itself. And then there was some questions about the hydraulic oil. I asked the vendor what the specification of the hydraulic oil they use. So they use what's called Clarity Bio. It's a marine environment approved hydraulic oil. It's biodegradable, and it's environmental friendly. If you go to the next page. So here's an environmental impact criteria where they actually did studies and it shows you they did studies with freshwater fish, different algae, shrimp, things of that nature, and it passed all of those environmental criteria. So we would do the compactor with the 2 10-yard recycle containers behind it. That's kind of what it would look like. So for the recycle, you get the 2 10-yard containers. There's 139 pounds per cubic yard of loose single stream, again, per US EPA statistics and verified with the trash vendor. That would be a 2,780 pound capacity with the two of them combined. At 4.9 pounds of solid waste, 32% is recycled. So at 432 bedrooms, there would be 677 pounds of recycle per day, which would put it at about a 3.5 day capacity, and they would be picked up 2 times a week on average. So here's some overviews, just kind of showing some these here are, I think the next 5 are all in Massachusetts. They're all 200 units plus. And what we have here is, it's just, where the red arrow is, it's a single compactor tucked out of the way. If you go to the next one, again, the single compactor up on the right hand corner, tucked out of the way. Again, same situation, single compactor. Here's another one. This is in Andover, Berry Farms, single compactor tucked out of the way. Again, same situation. And here we are. This here is in Florida, a developer that we really like down there that does some of the nicest projects in Central Florida. So here's a couple examples of theirs. It's single out of the way, and then this last one here, again, same developer in Florida that we like. single compactor out of the way.
So that one in
And-
Florida, but that, the one before that was 400 units, substantially more than we have with that single-use location.
Right.
These are all Class A apartment complexes, and they're all less than 5 years old or newer. So this is not like we're picking something that's out of the way, or something that's old and outdated, or something that's not attractive. These are some of the nicest projects in
You can find.
Massachusetts and in Central
So-
Florida.
The first 5 examples I used were Dolben properties. I'm not sure if you know, I'm sure you know who Dolben is. So they own 20,000 units from Florida to Maine. Very well-respected developer. We look up to them, and they know what they're doing. So.
These are some of the very projects, the best projects they do. So we're emulating the state-of-the-art projects out there. What we have to say is, we like the initial location that we had initially, that you had a problem with, because it was tucked further out of the way. But in moving it, we will get better circulation. So we made concessions. We gave up one of the garage buildings, and we moved the trash container in a more geographically preferred location to get better traffic flow. So we did listen to your comments, and we addressed them.
So, next, I know there were some questions of, what's the project going to look like? How is the view going to be from 122? So, we have put together a 3D model that shows, what the project will look like from 122 along Snow Road, and then from the abutting roads that are to our north. So if that's, that's the
That's the 20. That's a still.
it's
on.
the final,
Those are all the stills. Those are 4 stills.
These are just the stills on that email.
oh, wait a minute.
No, at the top right there.
This one?
Yeah, there you go. That says animation.
Okay, why is it sharing the wrong? Hold on. Let me share the right one. There we go.
Can you make that full screen?
So, and it might go a little fast, so you might want to. So obviously that's 122. That's Stop and Shop. You
Hold
could
on, I
see.
just went back a few minutes.
There you go. So you can see there's the apartments in the background. Now it'll
Down to street level.
come down to street level, going along 122. As you can see, the vegetation, and we went out in the field and verified this as well. There's some substantial trees that are along the slope and not on our property. It's on Stop and Shop Plaza's property, so you won't be able to see the buildings from 122. This is coming up along Snow Road. You can see the townhouses along the frontage on Snow Road. Those are the units that are set back 30 plus feet. Here is the main entranceway. You can see the clubhouse, the shotgun in and out. Again, those are the townhouses now heading to the north. You can see from a distance along Snow Road, okay, I can't talk fast enough. So this is along Frankie Lane. You can see up above the trees there from the aerial, those are the units in the back. Along Frankie Lane, you're not going to be able to see anything along that roadway. And then from Suzanne Terrace, along Suzanne Terrace, the vegetation that quite a number of the abutters, they have trees in their backyards as well as trees on our property that you won't be able to see it from Frankie Lane. And then we have some of the stills.
Well, I can go into right now. So the one abutter that doesn't have any vegetation up to his is 25 Suzanne Terrace, Timothy Querga. So I met with him yesterday, and we discussed. We looked at his backyard, how close the property line was, and we had some conversations. And I told him we'd be presenting that we'd be, offering to do some pine trees or some sort of trees. And through our conversations, Tim said he would rather have a fence at the top of that hill. And we're open to that. we're open to doing a fence for him. He says thinks it would provide more privacy for him and not have trees being an issue with his pool. So we'd be open to that as well.
What property is that?
25. So that's really along that property line there in the front where I think it's 8 is, and where he is in 25 are where there's gaps in the trees. The other abutters have some vegetation in between them and the property line, on their property line.
So you can see at number 25 Querga, his backyard, he's got a pool back there. So there's no vegetation along his property line. So that's where Cohen had talked about. We can add vegetation along our property line or do a fence. He was in favor of a fence.
He's asked for a fence.
Don't you have a swale up against that property line?
of them?
How would you add
It's cutting down for a swale so we can get the water, any of the water that's coming onto our property. We don't want that to pool. So we're swaling all of that water that's coming onto our property to the east and over towards the basin.
No, but my question is, how could you install trees along the property line if you have a graded swale?
It would be on the top of the berm.
So on the property line itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Is there gonna be a berm the entire length of that property line?
It's naturally there. There is, so behind 25, we looked at it. So his pool's here, at about 10 feet behind his pool, it goes up, and there's the crest, if you will, right there, and then it goes down naturally as it is now.
Is that true for the entire property line or just his property?
That I'm not sure.
For the first two properties, for number 18 and 18 and a half, their properties slope down into 14 Snow Road, and that's the area where there's some impoundment of water. So we're off of the property line. We're introducing a swale to keep that water from impounding, because we don't want to impound it and then push water back towards them. We want to capture it and send it along its way. And then as you head further to the east, those properties in their backyards, the grade goes from their backyard, it berms up, and then it'll berm back. It'll crest at the property line and then come back down into 14 Snow Road property. So there'll be a berm along that property line as you go from number 25 and then further to the east.
If I might add, for the record, Jeff Walshgraves Engineering. The very last property shown on the plan to the right, now formerly Valentin Neil Danielson, that drains onto Snow Road again, like the front two parcels.
Yes.
Yep.
So
I just want to make sure that the board understood that 3 of the properties in the middle, there's a high point basically around the property line where it drains both onto 14 Snow Road and onto the abutting properties. But that's not case on the 2 closest to Snow Road and the 1 farthest away from Snow Road.
and to one step further on that, Valentine and Danielson, we're going to swale that from their property. We're going to swale that along. We have an access way around the basin. We're going to swale that further to the east, so there's no impounding, and that'll swale and continue in the direction it goes and ultimately down to that isolated wetland. But we'll swale that so there's no impoundment of water between the 2 properties there either. So I think we've covered, I think, a lot of the highlights. I know that, we want to make sure that we're addressing all of the comments, and based on that, we believe that the site functions well. Another important item, the rear building, which is shown as building number 1, in working with the grades, originally all of the apartment style buildings were slab on grade. In order to work with the grades, primarily the whole site is flat. As you go up into that northeasterly corner, the grade starts dropping down. In order on a couple different notes, to work with the grade so that we can not have to introduce a lot of fill and raise the site up, you can see that driving aisle to the north of building number 1, we will have subsurface parking below that, which will add another 53 parking spaces below building number 1. So 2 ways, it works with the grades on the site, so we're not having to fill that whole area. It helps all the grading transition down to the basin much easier. In one of the earlier submittals, we had quite a bit of fill, and the pond was deeper. This allows us to have the grades flow more naturally down there. The basin footprint, or the area of disturbance, is smaller, and then we're able to add another 53 parking spaces. And getting into parking counts with using, another item. I keep on remembering all the important things that we've talked about before. With the townhouses in front, we had 1 parking space per originally, where we have the quote-unquote front door facing Snow Road, which I know, not to go too far off the topic I'm trying to reach, is people aren't going to be, any deliveries onto the site are going to come into the site and into the clubhouse. People aren't going to be pulling over onto the edge of Snow Road to make deliveries. All deliveries, whether it's Amazon packages, anything else, everything will come into the clubhouse. So that's going to be the central receiving area for any packages.
Dedicated package room in the clubhouse.
Correct. So with that, we're going to have a wider garage door at the rear of those townhouse units. So we'll have potentially 2 parking spaces in the garage, and then 2 exterior parking spaces behind the townhouses. So even if people use the garage for storage, each of those townhouses will have dedicated 2 parking spaces for each of the townhouses, which that helps the townhouses, but it helps with any overburden of parking for the apartment style units. They won't need to be, overflow parking because they only have 1 parking spot because they use their garage. So all of the parking, exterior parking, that will be dedicated for the apartment style units. So with that said, if we have there's, like I said, 224 apartment style units. If we have 320 surface parking, we have 53 parking spaces below the building, and then with the detached garages, there's a total of 48 stalls for the parking for the detached garage buildings. Being conservative and saying only half of them will have cars, other people may store things in them, so that would be 24 parking spaces. That gives us a total of 397 parking spaces for the 224 apartment units. So that comes out to 1.77 spaces per unit, so approximately 1.8, which we believe is a good number. If all of the detached garages were used by residents, that would bump that up by another 1/10. So that would be, instead of 1.77 spaces per unit, it would be 1.88 spaces per unit, about 1.9. So we feel confident that the parking count is more than adequate for, and based on other projects that this developer has done in recent past, in the past handful of years, and even the past couple of years. These are based on their experience. These are solid numbers, so there would be plenty of adequate parking for the townhouses as well as the apartment style units.
There was also comments regarding move-in, because you do get turns, you get so many turns, and we were not prepared when the board brought that up last time, but after thinking it through and talking it out, our turns are done during the day, which our parking lots are less than half full. So it's starting from like 6 o'clock on is when they start to fill up, and they're totally full by not totally full, but substantially full by 8 o'clock. the moving people, they're typically, they pack up in the morning and they arrive at the site at 10 o'clock and they're typically done. So these units are on average 900 to 1,000 square feet. This is like a 2-hour move. So generally, they arrive at 10 o'clock and they're out by 12. Now, there's all kinds of variations, but very rarely do they work past 4 o'clock. And this is what we're finding on all properties. We check with our management company. So the moving, the turns, it does happen quite a bit, but we don't see that as affecting the parking at all. So just to let you know that we looked at that also, that aspect also, and we don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so I think we've covered quite a bit. I think we've addressed quite a bit. I'm sure you have some questions and some comments, so we'd like to hear from the board and see what your thoughts are.
Comments or thoughts from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So the townhomes, how are those gonna be addressed? Are they gonna have an address on Snow Road?
No.
Well,
They'll-
they could, that's actually not a question we can provide. We generally check with, and each town is different. Sometimes it's the assessors, sometimes it's fire department. So we'll reach out to the town before we even start and get the numbering system for the buildings, the townhomes are all. So that's not a question where we can answer.
Here, you'd have to meet with Tammy for the addresses in the assessor's office.
Yeah, that would be their call.
So, and the reason I ask is just think about deliveries. If they're, 14D Snow Road, I'm sure deliveries are going to pull up in the front.
So I
not
can,
know that they
I
have
can,
to go.
I can speak to that. So there, if you look at one of the landscape plans, we're gonna put, like a modern split rail fence meandered with that sidewalk between Snow Road. So there'll be a fence there. There'll be no way anybody can cross.
So
The only way you can cross will be at the crosswalk across the main double barrel and the crosswalk down
I see.
by
Okay.
Maxwell.
So using Snow Road would be so inconvenient that we don't see
They'd have to
it.
jump a fence.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So first off, I want to say I really appreciate you guys doing all this work and really appreciate you actually doing the presentation on just the trash. I know that was obviously a big topic at our last meeting. The question still begs though, I am familiar with Dolman as well. I've actually lived at a Dolman building before. And the Dolman building that I lived in, they actually had a trash chute. And I know we talked about the cost of having a single compactor at every building. That's pretty expensive. And trash compactor that you just talked about, I mean, it sounds like it's the Ferrari of, trash compactors, but what if you had just like smaller trash compactors at every building? So, and again, the reason why I asked that is, I mean, we obviously live in New England. I know you showed obviously a couple examples of New England buildings there. But I mean, I'm just concerned someone who's either handicapped or elderly, if they're on the opposite side of the lot, for them to get all the way over there. I know they can probably drive, so the location's a little bit better, but just curious on your thoughts there and on what we can do. Have you looked into maybe doing them for the individual buildings? Just curious.
Yes, we have looked at that, and
You need to get closer. Either use that mic or just turn this one so you can talk into it. There you go.
yes, we have looked at that option, and yes, this trash compactor is the Ferrari. This is probably was this a $300,000?
A couple $100,000, yeah. Also.
$300,000 trash compactor. That's we could buy a lot of dumpsters for $300,000, as you can well imagine. The aesthetics of having those trash compactors all over the site really turns us off dramatically. Having the one trash compactor, you heard Colin said we're bi-weekly on our pickups, which is really nice. The fact that we've got a big truck coming only twice a month instead of once a week or twice a week, which you get in some of the smaller, because we do have some of those smaller units on some of our smaller projects, and we don't like the way they work at all as compared to this. This is a much more expensive but much better alternative for us to use.
And I can add, we've been involved in some apartment projects in Worcester where there's no room for, dumpsters. There's not even really room for trees. And they will have a trash room in the building, and they'll have like a garage door, in the back of the building, and then everything will go to a trash room. And then, but again, that's more of an urban type of, and then you're storing trash in the building. That can have other issues, and that's more of an urban type. In my experience, that's more of an urban type of procedure, where in suburban areas to have, and I've been going through other developments up and down Route 9, and I've seen other ones where they have, a couple of dumpsters next to each building, and, it's unattractive. It really is unattractive. This is, like I said, this is the Cadillac.
So the other thing too is a project this size, you'd say, oh, this is too large, but a larger project like this, the more density you have, the more people you have, then you have the ability to do some upscale things that you couldn't do on a lower project. So a project this size, I believe it's two full-time management people and 2 maintenance people.
Correct.
So and you can't afford to do that on a smaller project. So by having two full-time maintenance people, you have the ability, and we're not sure we're exactly going to do it, but we could do a concierge trash pickup where you charge the people $2 a week. It's a nominal fee, and he goes around and picks up all the, and we've done this at another project, so we know it can work. We haven't decided exactly what to do with this, but if there was a need for it, we could do it. And, those larger buildings, which a lot of people, they prefer not to see larger buildings, that gives us the elevator, that gives us the ability to service people with disabilities and our senior population, which I'm becoming one of those now if I'm not already. But my knees still work good, so I could still take the stairs. But the elevators, I could tell you, I wouldn't move into a building like that without an elevator myself. So those are the things that these larger projects give us, again, that we can service those parts of the population.
Awesome. Yeah, just curious. I mean, again, if you were on the other end and say your knees didn't work, is like just the location. But I do like the idea of the concierge style service. That's a great point. Another question I had, I know you addressed kind of the moving trucks. I agree with you and kind of like the loading times and that aspect. But another question I think that was brought up at our last meeting was, I have Amazon, for example, coming to my house daily.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And
Credit card are they using?
so I guess the question is, I know we talked about maybe trying to do some sort of like drop-off zone. I did see in the plans, like in front of each building, there is kind of like an entrance zone. I mean, any idea of the size of that kind of entrance? I know they're outlined by handicap spots, so I'm just kind of curious there if you guys put any thought into that, because I know we talked about maybe having some sort of like, park zone.
Yeah, we do in front of the clubhouse. If you have the layout plan in front of you, we pulled that curb in, so there is an area for Amazon truck. They can pull in and be outside of the driving aisle, and they can have
Gotcha.
a package delivery in front of the clubhouse. So we did. I didn't bring that up, but we do have a drop-off area in front of the clubhouse, so they pull off to the side outside of the driving aisle so that they can make drop-offs. Yeah, you can see it right there.
That's kind of the thing that we would see how that works, and we can also adjust that, but we're going to want to make sure that it works for our residents without a doubt. So if that works, that'll be fine. If we adjust something else, that's the other thing, is that we will also be working with the post office too. So we can propose certain things, but then they could come in and overrule us. So that's a decision that we don't have the ultimate say on that we'd be deferring to the post office, but we can set the plans and tell them this is what we want to do, and we can use that as a starting point.
Awesome. Yeah, I did notice that, so I didn't know if that was the intention there, but looks good to me. And then one last question. Actually, two more last questions here, sorry. Last question in regards to, one thing I'm curious about is like the long-term maintenance of the stormwater system. So you've obviously got catch basins, infiltration chambers, swales, you name it. It looks obviously great on paper, but these things only work if they're maintained. Any sort of like plan for ongoing maintenance of those basins? Curious what your thoughts are there.
So as part of the stormwater design, we do implement an operation and maintenance plan where that covers, cleaning out the catch basins. When they get some accumulated sediment into them, those will come in, we'll have a maintenance or a maintenance company come in, they'll remove any of the sediment from the catch basins. In terms of the swales and the basin, those get mowed on a regular basin or twice a year, typically in the spring and the fall. And any accumulated sediment that goes into those forebays, those get cleaned out. So we have a plan that is submitted, and that is part of the maintenance for the whole project, and that's given to the maintenance
Management.
Yeah, so
management
will
company,
monitor that, and it's
and they
something that would be
monitor
their
that.
responsibility.
Yeah, and we've done outside of this, we've done a number of over 55 type developments, and when it goes to whether it's the condo association, that gets submitted as part of the documents that go to whether it's the condo association or whether it's with the company that's managing the property. That gets done, and those are adhered to as part of the documents with the project.
We subcontract all this out to landscape companies that take it. It's all part of their contract.
Okay, yeah. The question is just, 5, 10, 20 years from now, obviously, is
They're actually maintained better than other projects because we have full-time professional landscapers. So I can tell you that it's done better than most other projects.
awesome. That's it for me now.
I got something,
Have at it, please.
unless you want
Nope.
to. Getting to his packages, if they're all left at the clubhouse, which is probably a decent idea, that means everybody that lives there probably's got to stop there every day, get out of their car, walk in, see if they got a package. Same with mail. I would imagine mail would be in the same spot. So that just adds, I don't know if that adds to what it adds to. Is there enough parking there just for 3 minutes or whatever for everybody? Also, the views you did, is it possible to do it without leaves? I'm serious, because 5 months out of the year, we don't have leaves, so, I mean, that one gentleman on the street that you talked to, that's great. I think that's good that you reached out to him, but the guy next door is gonna go in, December. Geez, I didn't get a fence.
Most of those trees are actually pine trees. So we actually have pine trees. And
Well,
we know-
that's good.
I know, and that's all of it.
No, that's
And
good.
As far as the packaging, that I could tell that I may be different, but if I was living there, I wouldn't pull up, shut off, and go in. I would just park my car and walk over and grab my pack. Number one is I don't get packages that often, so it's like once every other week for me. But some people,
I don't, but my wife does.
I know.
So one of us would be
We all have
stopping.
that problem. But in any event, we can't control exactly how that's going to play out. but
I'm not saying if it's good or bad, I'm just bringing
it's a
up
possibility.
a possibility.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Right at the entrance.
And we may have to adjust things so we try to plan for the best. We try to plan for what we think is going to work, but everything doesn't work out the way we plan, and we may have to make adjustments as we go along. But we have the incentive to make it all work for our residents and for ourselves.
Right.
Because if it doesn't work for our residents, they won't stay.
Snow. What are you gonna do with the snow besides haul it away? Because I don't see any place to put it. I mean, I've looked at, if you stack it on the islands or try to, you're burying all your bushes and trees. You don't want to put it on the sidewalks, of course.
Now, if, for smaller storms, obviously it's going to get pushed off to the side like like everybody's, if we have larger storms where they're gonna, have snowbanks that are gonna be impeding parking, they either truck it away, or there are areas where there's minimal landscape areas. It's more of a lawn area that's on the either side of the clubhouse, particularly on the south side of the clubhouse, and on the quad area on the northeasterly portion. There's some bigger lawn areas over there. We don't want to push it down towards the basin and heading towards the wetlands. We don't want to do that, obviously, but we do have areas where we do have some bigger lawn areas where we have the ability to do that.
We also typically we pile the snow up in some of the least convenient parking spaces temporarily, and then we remove it from that area.
You haul it.
Yeah,
The,
and we're doing that now. We do that now, but not every storm.
No, I realize that. I mean, it's gonna eat up parking spaces no matter what.
Absolutely.
Because it has to.
And we may find out
There
that
you
we have, so the whole parking driving thing is evolving, that, Elon Musk thinks he's gonna have 1 million, driverless cars out there, and if that does, we're gonna have twice as much parking as we need, but so, we're not planning for that, but that's a possibility, so, we typically, on all of our projects, we have more parking than we need, and that's a good thing,
Now, is the sidewalk still going in that you negotiated with selectmen? Where was that? Wasn't there a sidewalk involved with,
we're gonna have sidewalk that is gonna traverse along all of our frontage on Snow Road, and then there's a crosswalk that goes over to Maxwell Drive, at the
okay,
southerly.
I guess I misunderstood.
And then we're gonna
it.
have
I thought there was gonna be one from your development all the way down to CVS
Well,
on the other, this side of the road. I mean, the right, your side of the road.
and we're not opposed to doing that. What the issue is Snow Road, the right-of-way on Snow Road is variable width. In some areas, it's only like 40 feet wide. And the existing curb line along Snow Road, especially if you go up a few sheets, Katrina, keep going. Oh, nope. No, keep going. There's more that's shown on one of the other sheets. There you go. If you look on that bottom left-hand corner, you can see the edge of the pavement. It's only a couple of feet
Right.
until you're onto the front yard of the abutting property. So we'd have to go onto abutting properties,
Which you can't do.
which I mean, if,
I think he's got a retaining wall there too.
and,
isn't he?
oh, yeah, and then, I don't know if it's number 8, I think it's number 6, there is a retaining wall there, there's a small retaining wall.
Right up against the street line.
Right up, yeah, maybe a couple of feet off of the pavement, so,
Okay, so somebody in building 6, if they wanna walk down a CVS, they have to walk out the main entrance,
go across the
sidewalk, so they gotta go
sidewalk
that
down,
way to
cross over
come
by
this way.
Maxwell Drive, go down Maxwell Drive on the other side of the street,
Right,
and we're going to be replacing the sidewalk where we're doing the turning lane, so there'll be a full 5-foot wide sidewalk down there. Then there's an existing crosswalk along the shoulder of, cutting across Snow Road. We're going to be replacing that and widening it, and then adding another, or improving the handicap ramp that is at the intersection of Snow Road and on our side of the street, down at the intersection of Snow Road and 122. So there's gonna be sidewalks, crosswalk, and then there's a concrete sidewalk that goes right over to Stop and Shop.
And then there's the other option. There's a little path that goes right through the middle of our property, right down to Stop and Shop, and it's less than half of the distance. So
that's how they'll go.
yeah, yeah. If but it's a substantial hill. I could probably still do it now, but I probably won't do it 10 years from now.
You do it going down.
Yeah.
I can't do
I
it
was
doing
on
up.
that hill last week after they did the animation because I wanted to confirm that all those trees were the heights they were and the locations they were, and it's pretty steep.
Is the hill on the Stop and Shop property or your
Correct.
property?
Yeah.
It goes up, the hill's on the Stop Shop property, and then there's another 20 feet of flat before our property line on the top of the hill.
But it's a well-worn path that is being used.
there.
It's being used.
If I had a case of waters, I wouldn't be going up there.
And one last question on the intersection at Worcester Street. Is it impossible, I thought had asked you to design a merging lane out onto Worcester Street. Didn't we ask that? A lane going out onto Worcester Street for a bunch of feet?
You mean if somebody turns right?
Correct.
We may have discussed something like that. I don't remember. Yeah.
I thought we had asked if that could be designed. Or an idea of it.
We're not opposed to it. When you're saying merging, if you're taking a right,
So in other words, you come down, you stop at the stop sign, you can pull right out because there'll be another lane for a couple of 100 feet.
going on 122.
On 120, it'll
Heading
be
north.
on 122.
There is, as you know, there's two lanes and then it merges back into one lane.
And doesn't that merge happen after snow?
It does.
It does.
So you've already kind of got it there.
Only a few feet after Stowe.
Okay.
I brought
It's
show
like
and
right there.
brought show and tell. What I'm worried about, Bill, is, the merging is occurring immediately after Snow Road if you're northbound of Worcester.
It's really happening at Snow Road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
I drive
the
that all the time.
dashes go right by it,
Yeah.
by about a dash or two. So, the reason I brought this up is, these photos, I just wanted the board to see what
Yeah.
I was looking at.
Yeah, actually, the dashes end at
With
Snow
respect
Road.
to the offsite improvements plan. Got enough for all you this time.
No, you go. You must have burned through your color.
I didn't even wanna look, it didn't beep at me, so I was happy. But the point being is there's already merging going on for people maneuvering to go from 2 lanes to 1, so I would imagine the traffic people would be opposed to adding another merging lane from Snow Road into the mix. That'd be 3 lanes into 1 occurring almost immediately, so.
Well, I'm saying a merging lane going a few 100 feet anyways.
Gotcha, and there's the merging lane that doesn't go a few 100 feet. So my feeling is there'd probably be a lot of resistance from the traffic people and maybe from Mass DOT. But I see the white dashed line separating the 2 lanes on northbound ending right after Snow.
It's right at Snow Road. I mean, that's been one of the problems from the start.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And Brian has his hand up. Go ahead and unmute Brian.
Thanks. Since we were just talking about some sidewalks, I figured I might as well touch on sidewalks going in the other direction. And I saw in some of the responses to Graves' peer review comments, there was similar notes to what you were just saying about going south. That the right-of-way interplaying with people's property might make it difficult to extend sidewalks going north. I think, we've had comments from abutters, the DPW, and the police department all kind of emphasizing the importance of extending sidewalks in that direction. Just wondering if you've entertained any conversations with any of those abutters or the people that would be affected to see if they'd be interested in entertaining it anyway, or if that idea is less feasible from your perspective.
Well, we're not opposed to it. We'll start right off there. And again, it's the same situation as you said, going to the north, where the shoulder of Snow Road is a couple of feet off of the right of way, and I didn't burn through as much color. We were out there discussing that last week when the sun was actually out, and you can pass this around, but this stake is the property line. The surveyor had put a stake right on the property line. There's the white line along the northerly
That's a
portion of Snow Road, and there's the neighbors. There's mailboxes, trees, some fences, so there would be disruption. And if That's something that, the abutting properties to the north of us would be, on board with. We're on board with it.
We'd need cooperation from literally every homeowner there, so we either have trees that would have to be removed, or that sidewalk would need to be pushed closer towards their residence, and,
And on the other side,
You can move the street over.
on the other side, there's utility poles right along the shoulder of the road going right up the line. So if we were to put a sidewalk, it would be on the other side of the utility poles and be well within their front yards. So again, we're game, but we'd have to bring.
So,
it would be very disruptive to that.
so, I don't know, how many, we've had, what, 6 meetings? And I hear things like this, that you're game and you do it, but, but have you talked to the neighbors? Have you actually gone and knocked on the doors and asked? Okay, and then there was another comment in here, somebody, it discussed possibly emergency access through the Grafton Water Department, and the response is that you don't control the Grafton Water Department. Well, we didn't ask if you controlled the Grafton Water Department. We asked if you could arrange emergency access. Did you knock on the door and ask them?
The elevations, there's a steep.
Okay, then say that, for crying out loud, okay?
Okay.
Instead,
No, it's-
we get a response that says, we don't control the land. Well, we know you don't control that land. But the request is, and then you say that you're willing to do these things, and then the response comes back, we don't control the land. My expectation is that you knock on the doors and you ask.
Right, and there
Right,
is
and
a
as far as the
significant
sidewalks
problem.
going north, knock on the doors and ask, or can you move the road over? I mean, is there room on the other side? Shift the road over so you have room to put a sidewalk, right? Either you're serious about working with us or you're not, and quite frankly, it feels like you're not, right? So, these are things that are important to the town. I understand you're dealing with things on your site, but, as part of the 40B, there's also the issue of impacts to the town. And these are things that are important to the town. And I don't, either we're going to try and deal with these things or we're not.
You're right, that we did knock on the doors, and that we did knock on but we did look at it, we did discuss it, we thought it'd be highly unlikely, but you're correct, we did not approach them. We will do that.
And, or turn around and just say, no, it's too expensive, we're not interested in doing it, right?
We didn't say
so
that.
when you start talking about telephone poles and things like that, I get it, it's expensive, then just say that.
Well, that's another level, but we looked at that sidewalk and said it would be close to those homes, or we'd have to take down a number of trees. We didn't see that as a viable, but we didn't approach the homeowners. We will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comment.
Brian, were you done? I didn't mean to interrupt your question.
No, yeah. So done on sidewalks. Just a couple other quick points. So
Yeah, go ahead, please.
and Katrina, I don't know if you could pull up the plan set sheet 2. Probably not a surprise. I'm going to ask about parking. I just wanted to confirm while Katrina's pulling that up. Did I hear on the townhouses that we now think we're going to plan for 2 garage spots and 2 driveway spots per unit?
That's what I heard.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
So at a minimum, if people use their garage for storage, and they're not gonna pull their cars into the garage, we have 2 parking spaces per townhouse exterior.
Brian, is this the one you wanted?
Yeah. So towards the top, or now the a little bit. Sorry, you were good. Down a little bit more.
Come down, yeah.
All right, and now a little bit over to the left. So where we have the breakdown of the parking. So there's a line that says off-street parking spaces provided, residential 445, and then there's the detail that adds up to 469. So there's a difference of 24 between those two, and I thought that might have been an error, that there should have only been 12 garage spots and 12 driveway spots for the townhouse. But if those numbers are correct, summing to the 469, what's the difference between that and the 445 above?
There's 2, because those are exterior parking spaces, we have 2 garage spaces for each townhouse, so that's the 24. There's 12 townhouses and there'd be 2 garage spots, so that's 24.
Yeah, so I'm just asking about the difference between the 445 on the parking spaces provided line and the total of the 469,
So
or
we
if
have
those numbers should just agree.
surface parking, 320, subsurface garage, so that's under building 1 in the back. Detached garages, there's 48, then there's townhouse garages and townhouse driveways.
No, what
Yeah, so that sums to the 469, and we just have there's 445 above. I just don't know if those two numbers should agree or if there's a difference.
Then parking space for residential. Oh, off street. Oh, that's the 20. The difference is the off street parking. Residential. Yeah, the difference is the 24, which is the townhouses, I believe.
Townhouse driveway.
Garages.
Or is it just left over from when there were single car garages and single car driveways?
Yeah, I think that might be it.
When you went to doubles, then you added 24 spots.
Oh, because when we go parking spaces, off-street parking, there's 320. The 469 is including the garages. But then if you forget about the garages, those are, I think, lumped in with the exterior. Now you're making me go in circles.
It's fine. I mean, if it sounds like the 469 is the number that we're
The
more focused
469
on.
is, but then and I know that the townhouses are the townhouses, but I think the biggest thing is the dedicated parking for the apartment buildings.
Yeah.
We're backing out any of what would be quote unquote overflow from the townhouses and not counting those towards what would be the numbers for the apartments, which ends up being, when I had my numbers, there would be 421 spaces
Yeah.
for, if you included only half, if you include all of the garages, it would be 397 spaces, not including only half the garages, which that gives us the 1.77 per
Yep.
unit.
And I had asked the last meeting, and I don't think you were confident yet. But for the subsurface garage spaces, the 53 under building 1, have you decided if those are going to be reserved or dedicated spaces, or is that going to be open parking for theoretically anybody in that building?
Well, they'll be dedicated to that building.
But are you going to assign parking space?
I don't know if they'll be assigned, but so there's only 53, there's 63 units, so it's not like 64 units, not every unit will get a parking space.
Right.
Yeah. So not rented separately or anything like that.
Not really sure.
Okay.
Or could someone from whatever building it is in the lower right park in that one?
No.
Highly unlikely.
It'll be just that building.
Well, they could, right? There wouldn't be anything prohibited.
I want a place to put my vet.
Yeah.
We got a separate garage.
To get there early.
Keep it separate. We don't want to be there with the rest of
There's different, to answer your question, there's different ways you can do it, and we're not sure which way we're gonna do it yet. That you can rent them, you can add them in, you can bake them into the rent. It'll be an amenity for living in that building.
As you can imagine, that's a premium to build that kind of a structure. So it would have to be reflected in the whole rental, so. But not everyone is going to, there's not enough for every customer, and some guy might have 2 spots, the guy with the vet, he might have 2 spots when the little old lady, would have none.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think if it's not obvious, the only reason I'm asking is obviously if there's a separate rental or kind of anything limiting who can use those spots, it might make us pause about whether or not we give full credit for all of those spots when we're looking at a per unit count. But yeah, it's, just let us know as that develops.
Yeah, and I think either way, they will be assigned to someone in that building, one way or the other, whether they're rented separately or baked into the rent of a unit. It would have to be
Yep.
that way, or the parking wouldn't work for us.
So if we got 200 plus, what's the number, 239?
224.
224 people there, we've got to think that 50 of them would want to have that garage space for themselves. So out of the 224, so we're pretty confident. If we didn't have that kind of ratio, then you could have a legitimate concern. But having the ratio we have, it'll be utilized.
Yep, they'll be used.
Yes.
And then just on the intersection, I think the last meeting when we went through traffic in detail, we talked about how it have the potential, at least on paper, to improve the quality of that intersection compared to what it is today. And then by the end of the meeting, we kind of backed off of that a little bit because that was kind of a theoretical analysis, if you will, or a best case scenario, not necessarily completely taking into account the changes in elevation, some of the sight lines, and some of the unique characteristics of this particular intersection. Have any of those details been reviewed to kind of regrade that intersection based on the design we talked about tonight?
Well, on the we do have a grading plan that shows the extension of the pavement along the same contour lines, and at the location where your sight triangle starts, where the driver's eye is going to be, looking to the north, we do have adequate elevation and sight lines looking to the north. Looking to the south, there is that one. It's a big. I think it's a. I think it's a
bush
Rose,
in front of
it's a,
CVS.
I think it's a Rosa Sharon.
In front of CVS.
In front of CVS, and that's a big bush, and that blocks your line of sight. Even right now, it blocks your line of sight when you pull out there. Yeah. So that bush needs to go. But other than that, the sight triangles. The sight triangles work and the elevations work. Initially looking, where that stone slope is on the shoulder of the road? Initially I was looking, I'm like, geez, it looks, you're like, geez, that hill goes up. But when you go down to the intersection and you look, it's not an issue. And if it were an issue, we could work with the with the housing authority if there's some regrading. But based on the elevations of where the driver's eye would be, looking to the north, there isn't an issue with the grades out
I think they already cut that slope to accommodate that because the vision right there is just fine.
And they
Well,
stone.
can you just clarify? I missed that. Were you talking about the stone?
So we're talking about the slope in front of the housing authority on the right side of Snow Road as you're coming down.
It's kind of gravel on the side of the hill. It's gravel.
Slope along 122.
Yeah, if you zoom in, yeah, see right there.
Brian,
Okay.
this right at the end of my finger here.
Got it. Okay.
See right there? So your sight triangle, that's knocked down, and I'm assuming they lined it with stone so there wouldn't be any vegetation growing up in that area. So the sight triangles and looking to the north, that is fine. And the only obstruction, if you look to the south, if you look towards Stop and Shop,
In front of CVS.
in front of CVS, yeah, there's the culprit right there. It's those bushes right there that they block your line.
It's a substantial
Side.
bush too. It's
Yeah.
really large.
Who owns them?
That is in front of CVS. So
Those are burning bushes, that's not.
oh, you're right, burning bushes.
Burning bush,
I didn't.
Which is now illegal in Massachusetts.
There you go.
We're gonna get rid of those invasive species.
But can you can't cut them down because they're on CVS's property? Is that?
We're not sure if it is on their property or not.
I looking at
we
the.
would think it would be, but
I think it's just over. It is. It's just over.
Somebody's maintaining it.
They shape it up.
So the telephone pole typically would be in the right of way, not on CVS's property. So if the base of that tree is,
It's just over
yeah,
because we have it. We show it on there with an X on it. So yeah, we have to
I think if the tree warden or the DPW or someone else in town asks CVS to do it, I think they do it in a heartbeat.
And I don't,
And we could maybe replace it with something smaller, lower, so it wasn't, completely bare.
maybe a little roundup.
If I may, this that we're looking on the computer screen, I didn't see a sidewalk on the left side of Snow Road, but the photo I provided does have a sidewalk. I think the sidewalk was added as part of the Mass DOT project. My point is the slope that we're looking at on the screen is a steeper slope than what this photo is. I get a feeling that the sight line has been addressed by that Mass DOT project a few years ago.
Yeah.
And this is an older photo, what's on the computer
It
screen.
could be. It's a Google Street Maps.
I'm sorry?
It's Google Street Maps, so
Actually,
it
it
could
says
be.
2015 on it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
no,
But I'm not seeing a
2015.
sidewalk on the
There is,
housing authority side, but there is now.
that goes all the way up,
To the next one. To the
to,
bridge?
Wheeler Road, I believe.
Correct.
Or-
yes, you know where you can cut across and go over where you can, there's a parking lot.
Alright, so here's the
Canoe and
latest.
all that
This
goes
is
up there.
Eklaw Landing, I think.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
it only
Yes,
goes
yep,
as far
yep.
as,
Yeah, it goes right up to,
That
The,
pushes
the
much
point was,
Yeah.
I think I want to make sure, sightline's critical. And
at
the
all the
photo
time,
we were
yeah.
just looking at was the sight line that I was concerned about, but this looks a lot better.
Gravel.
And I think this is existing
Yeah,
conditions
this
today.
is August of 23.
Thank you.
Good catch, Jeff.
question for Jeff. I hate to see you sitting there doing, well, you just added a lot, so.
I'd be glad to sit and be quiet.
In your review, and I'm not asking for, on the drainage swale. I just want to make sure that the water going down there, I mean, that's all sand up there as far as I know. And I know most of it, but some of it's going to go down before it gets to the basin. Just want to make sure it can't bleed out into the neighbors.
The low point,
There's a couple houses at 25 and the next one might. They're lower. I mean, it's quite a distance. But it's sand too.
right, but if it's gonna infiltrate into the ground through the topsoil and the swale, I think its velocity is gonna be downward instead of horizontal, because there's nothing impeding it once it gets through the topsoil into the natural gravel,
Right.
sand that's at the site. I haven't reviewed this in detail yet,
Right.
but I get your point. What I really wanna make sure of is that even when there's times when there's frost in the ground and snow on the ground and then the warm rains and there's a lot of water moving and we can't rely on infiltration whatsoever, the water's gonna have a place to go downstream. And, this is significantly different than the previous plans I looked at when there was an interruption of surface water flow from 18 and 18 and a half onto the site, as well as at the rightmost part of the project. But
Why would you use a swale and not just pipe it? I'm curious.
you get better water quality treatment.
Oh,
And the bottom of that swale, it starts at elevation 338, and it drops behind Querga. It drops to about 336, and
Cadigan is 334.
yeah, and then it drops down to it's around 336. So we're within from the low spot of Cadigan, we're maybe 2 feet high, but there's a big berm in between.
Right.
That's all sand.
No, I know, it's quite a distance.
Yeah.
Anything else? Alex, you got something?
I did have just one comment. And I think we might touch on this later, but just in regards to like the playground that you guys have outlined, I know we mentioned it on, I forget who mentioned it, but maybe Dan, it was you, at our last meeting, but the size of that playground, did you guys put any thought into trying to make that a little bit bigger? I mean, I was just thinking about the kids or thinking about, I mean, you have an awesome clubhouse, maybe putting it by the pool. Families are there with their kids, they can go in the playground and the pool. Just kind of curious if you guys put thought into that, because I know it was a topic last time.
We don't get much of a kids population. That we tend to get younger couples without kids, they'll typically have a kid and then they'll be looking around for a house. Or we get people, 55 and older that, their grandchildren will visit and they'll use it, but, it's not the kind of item in there that we see gets a lot of high use, but it does get use, and we do want to have a playground on site. So we do like having them, because it's a good option, but they don't get much use. So the size of that, I mean, it's not a park, it's a small playground for the neighborhood and or our development.
And if there was a need for it, and people were looking for it, there's plenty of space in the quad outside of that pool area where you could do a dedicated playground area. We do have area for a little dog park that's on the southerly side, that kind of abuts, right. If you look at the landscaping plan, it's just to the right of building 3 in that bottom corner. So we have a dog park in that area. But if there was a need for an expansion or a larger little playground area, we have room for it.
And typically, when we permit these in other towns, we get a lot of comments from some of the people on the board, not this board, other boards, and residents that the dog park is too big, or we shouldn't have a dog park, and the playground is too small. We should have it bigger. But I can tell you from a use point, that's what we want to do. We want to address the people that are going to be living here. The dog park is going to get used 100 times more than the playground.
More than the pool.
More than the pool, more than everything. They're dog parks, and I'm not a dog owner, but if we don't accommodate dogs, we'll cut out 40% of our attendance, literally.
So I guess I missed that. Where's the dog park?
Right here.
Bottom corner, just in that corner between those
Which
two
sheet are you
buildings.
looking at?
I'm on the landscape plan.
Landscape
L1.
plan. Last sheet,
So it's,
or
so it's east of building 6, right?
Yes, it's right
Correct.
next to, yeah. Right here.
All right, I see. Interesting.
yes.
Is it possible, though, the reason that the tenants in your other projects don't use your tot lot too much is maybe because it's too small and they don't like it? I mean, if you built a nicer one, a bigger one, would it get more use?
So I can answer that question. So the properties we have now, I think we have 3 children, 2 children, 1, and 9. Of the 4 properties that we currently own.
And are they the similar size as this?
Yes.
200 units?
Well, no.
No, not 200 units.
They're not 200 units, but in terms of, I'm just saying there's just not a lot of children.
Right, but it depends how big the project is. If you have 9 kids in 200 units, it's
Right,
different from 9
and that's what
kids in-
he just spoke to. If we had, it would say a number 20 kids, and the playground was too small, we needed a bigger playground in the quad. We would put a bigger playground in the quad. It would be in our best interest to accommodate our residents so they would move out.
But generally, we
That's
don't.
not what we're seeing.
We don't see that, but if we did see that, we would accommodate our residents.
I guess one of my points though is that if you had a nicer playground, that would attract probably families. And one of the needs in this town, as expressed in the housing production plan, is family housing. So if people are looking at this project and seeing like this tiny little playground in the corner of the site on a busy road, they might say, geez, this isn't that great for my kids.
Well, we put the playground up there because the comment was that the residents wanted to be able to access it as well. We didn't put it up there because we thought that would be the best place.
It would be more accessible
For the whole community.
for people in the neighborhood, as opposed to walking and going into the quad area. Maybe they might be a little shy to go use it.
That was
But the need for the playground is for the residents of this project, not for the residents of the neighborhood. The residents of the neighborhood have yards,
Well, but they're right, though. We did make that comment.
Right.
but still, it's needed here because these people don't have yards. The people in the neighborhood already have yards, and they have pools, and they have playgrounds. I think one of my concerns with the way, where you cited this playground is that you put it right up against 18 Snow Road?
Yep.
Have you talked to that owner? Does he know that there's gonna be a tot lot right up against his property line?
I know that,
It's
I
been,
think there,
it's been in the plans for probably 4 months now, so
Right.
we haven't specifically asked them. We located that playground there as a comment back from the board.
The only reason.
So I guess my observation on that is that I know from experience representing clients who've had playgrounds put right on their property lines, it's not very neighborly. The kids who play in playgrounds make a lot of noise, because that's what kids do. It's not like it's mean or there's nothing wrong with
Right.
that. It's just that it's better to put a source of noise away from abutters. If I was living at 18, I wouldn't be too happy if there's gonna be a lot of kids screaming and yelling at all hours of the day.
That's a possibility, but that's not what we're finding in our communities now.
but that's, so if, I
I
mean,
mean,
we don't have an issue relocating it and having a park area, within the quad area.
And I agree. I think it was located there based on our prior comment. But I think in thinking about some of these other points that Dan raised, I think it would be more logical.
Okay,
then we'll move it.
yeah, that's not an issue.
That's just one member of the board.
Well,
Yeah,
again,
I agree as well.
Okay,
And maybe I'm even flip-flopping. I don't know if I'm the one who may have said something about,
you might have been.
it's fine.
Fine.
We're,
We'll move it.
So
I
that-
don't feel strongly either way, quite frankly.
Okay,
But it kind of leads us into why I'm going to make my comments now. One is we talked about trying to make a T intersection at Snow Road in 122. What happened to that? Or more, more of a T as opposed to the Y or whatever the heck that is now.
just the width of it, it doesn't lend itself, in all honesty, it doesn't lend. We put a wide radius so if people are taking that right-hand turn lane, they have a wide radius to pull onto 122 north. It just doesn't lend itself, although we did put a wider radius there. And the sight lines, with the added lane don't seem to be an issue. So
plus the fact that we're higher up and
You
it
can see,
extends the
so-
vision even more. So being on that upper slope, you have really good visibility from there.
Yeah, I disagree. As someone who's driven that plenty of times, I disagree. And part of the problem, as we talked about this before, was your face, and it's, I don't think the sightlines take this into account, but you're not facing north,
Oh, yeah, I can
right?
find it. Give me a second.
You're not facing it directly across the street. You're already looking partly south. So to actually look north, you really need to crane your neck around, to be able to see that. And I think that just makes it a much more difficult intersection. That's just the way it is now, regardless. And I'm not convinced that adding the second lane is going to make it safer. It may move traffic through faster, which will help with the safety a bit, but I just think it's hard to see today, and I don't know that that's going to get any better.
On this
Did we
one?
have a safety issue on that? Was there a safety?
Do we have a safety issue? Well, let me show you something that Dan and I found.
So a lot of
Well, I'll get the public input later.
So we can talk to the traffic engineer about that and see if he has any.
I kid you not. I found it on Google. Dan and I were looking. So that's kind of what happens at that intersection.
I mean,
So
yeah, I believe there is. I thought.
yeah,
Didn't somebody have the
we'll
numbers?
bring it back up with the traffic engineer and see if he has any other
Yeah, and obviously
configurations that he thinks might
our
be.
peer review needs to look at it as well. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, everything we've been seeing tonight just came in the last week, so
Got you.
Jeff hasn't had a chance to look at it. So I mean, all of it needs to be peer reviewed.
Yep.
But okay, so
Can I-
I was thinking you had, you buddied up to DHCD. They own the property. It seems like you got everything you need to be able to make that a T, or improve that. But if you can't, you can't.
Again, we'll take another look at it, and again, we can look at it in conjunction with the traffic engineers and
Yep.
and see if there's something. We thought this was, again, for traffic movement and trying to keep the rating of the intersection
The queuing.
and
Yeah,
the queuing
and you-
down.
you
I
may
think we've
get it.
addressed that. But to try to square it up, we'll take a harder look at that.
Just on that point, I think, the fact that you have what appears to be a good working relationship with the housing authority is really a positive thing here. I mean, if they're willing to give up some land to accommodate some redesign of this roadway, why wouldn't they might be willing to give up the land that's needed to be able to square this off. I mean, squaring it off would definitely require an easement from the housing authority or some kind of, land swap or something, right? But that would improve the sight lines in both directions. It's not just looking right, it's looking left. And I think this is Exhibit A. This car was obviously pulling further into the intersections we could see.
Right.
And if you squared it off, you'd really solve that problem. And this, to me, kind of goes hand in hand with the sidewalk issue. If you are going to be doing a lot of work in Snow Road, then why not do the work that goes up to the project site and basically move this road further west? And that would give you the room to put the sidewalk on the east side of Snow Road. If you're going to be already out there doing all this grading and paving and everything else, yes, it requires probably the moving of utility poles and things like that, but it's just crazy to have project residents cross Snow Road, go down a little ways, and cross back to Snow Road just to get to what we all know they're going to go in that direction, right? There's nothing in the other direction.
Correct.
Well, if you own a canoe, you might want to go down to the canoe landing.
Right.
So then you've really killed two birds with one stone. You're solving a sight distance problem and public safety issue at the intersection, but at the same time you'll have your crews out there and you can fix the sidewalk situation, just improve the sidewalk and just connect it, because there already is a concrete sidewalk, right, that goes up past CVS.
It goes past CVS, I believe, up to around
Drive.
Maxwell Drive.
Yeah, so there's
Yep.
really just one gap in front of those two houses. There's two houses that you're dealing with, right? So you can either knock on their doors and get permission to put the sidewalk on their property, or shift the road 5 feet to the west to give you the room to put the sidewalk.
Okay.
So that remains, as I said previously, that remains one of my biggest concerns. And as I said previously, I'm not interested in putting any more traffic at that intersection than what, was, essentially our existing bylaw in use schedule, density schedule would allow, which is obviously substantially less than 224 units. So that remains a big issue for me. The other thing is that I had said was, the appearance, and, I appreciate the drive-by and all that. Like Peter said, I'm still a little curious of what that's gonna look like in the wintertime, and also at the very beginning of that video, you can see something behind Stop and Shop, and I hope that you weren't starting that video late, because a little bit further down.
Actually, to be honest with you, I had him do more. It was
Right.
going to start earlier, and I had him go more to make sure we didn't have that issue.
Right, I mean, because it's, we right at the beginning, you can see something,
So
so
when
that
you
I couldn't help but
you-
wonder if we go back 200 feet further. do
Well,
we see
why you
more?
see something at the beginning, it's actually he's up at like 100 feet.
Well, no, I know that, but
Come
when
down.
he came down, so he's up, and then when he comes down, you still see something. And, but it's, at that point, it just seems like you're maybe like in front of CVS or,
How about a
but regardless.
couple balloons?
Yeah, we may get to that point. But then we kind of get into all these issues. We have concern about snow storage. We have concern about the tot lot. We have concern about, the flow. We had mentioned 2 driveways in, and as opposed, with the townhouses in the center, as opposed to this thing. We had hired a kind of a design peer review for Prentice Place that I think, gave us a lot of good information, but also, I think helped to make that a much better development than what he came in with. And I think I'm at the point, we have these ideas, we put the tot lot here, we put it there, and we're not professionals, we don't know. And should we be getting level of peer review to kind of guide us? Maybe maybe there aren't any issues with snow storage. Maybe there aren't any issues with the flow through the property and where packages are being dropped and all these things we're asking about. So, who it was that looked at Prentice?
Yeah, Cliff Bomer, he's a solo guy, and he does a lot of design peer reviews around the state on projects just like this, the bigger projects and the bigger buildings.
I just wonder if we should just kind of get that level of input to kind of help guide us whether is what we're looking at good or not, and
I think we know enough to be dangerous, and I think we've identified probably a dozen issues, like the internal circulation, the location of the dumpsters, the lack of a loading area in front of the buildings, your proposal to put the clubhouse at the T of the entrance driveway. A lot of us intuitively think that's going to cause a lot of congestion, but we're not the experts, and so I think we've raised a lot of these issues. Having expertise come in and either confirm what we're saying or tell us we're wrong, or have actually more ideas or better ideas to make this better.
So this is what we do for a living. This is not our first project. I've looked at Prentice Place, and it's a very attractive project. But I personally think that our project is more attractive than that right from the start. So, Give Design, we consider ourselves professionals, although we're not perfect, we're not flawless. You've made comments, we've made some adjustments, and I think we've got a better project now than what we initially came in with, and that's due to both sides working together. We think it's worked out well, so we're good with that. But again, we're building a project that we're going to put a lot of resources in, a lot of time, own it a lot of years. We're very careful of who we select for an architect, how we build our projects, and we think that's evident by the projects that we've done before us. Our calling card is our last project. So if you come look at, and we think that our projects, and we're biased, we think they're better than any projects that have been built in this town so far, and in a lot of neighboring towns. So if you approve this project, when you approve this project, it will be the best project we have in this town, without a doubt.
So you have a responsibility to 224 families living in that piece of property. And that's it. This board has a responsibility to 15,000, 18,000 people in the town of Grafton. Right?
Yeah.
Our free responsibility far outweighs yours. And for that reason, the 40B law and all of the zoning laws allow for things like peer review. Mm-hmm. You're right. You have professionals. You bring in professionals. You're very, but we have a much bigger responsibility, and I think that at this point we need peer review of the overall design, and I think that's the direction we need to go. That's my opinion. I don't know how others on the board feel or not, but just like we get peer review of the stormwater to make sure we're not going to be flooding our neighbors, and we get peer review of traffic, etc. I think that the overall design is an issue. Look, I mean, we've made it clear that we're very concerned about the density. You have made it very clear that you need a couple hundred units. So, all right, that's contributing to making the site, a lot of these questions about the site. Okay, so if it has to be a couple hundred units, then we have these various questions, and we're not so sure that this is really a good design or not. Let's get a peer review in here and do it.
You have a traffic problem out there right now. You have a queuing problem out now that we all recognize. We're going to be adding more traffic to that queuing.
Yeah.
But with our improvements, we're going to be dramatically improving that intersection. So that fact cannot be ignored with this project, that we're taking the resources of the design now and the pledge to improve that. So if we're really concerned about the traffic out there, then if we don't make those improvements, who else is going to make those improvements?
Steve, you've identified one improvement. I mean, we're talking about dozens of issues. That is an improvement, and I think the board's acknowledging that that's the right turn lane is what we asked for, and I think it's a good idea.
It's huge.
But we also just said that there's 2 or 3 other things we'd like you to do, including squaring off the intersection and extending the sidewalk.
We didn't say we're looking at that.
Right, but I think Bill's point though is that there's more than just a few things that you can take credit for. There's a lot of things that we have real concerns about.
But also, I said, and the traffic engineer agreed, that they do not take into account that T intersection being on an angle. They don't take into account that T intersection being raised, right? When we're talking about the flows through the intersection, right? They're just using strictly numbers on paper. And the reality is actually different. And we know, people here know that the reality is different because of the way that intersection is built. There's a queuing problem there, not because there's a ton of traffic. There's a queuing problem there because it's very hard to see, because you've got two lanes, you've got a lane drop right at Snow Road. That's the reason there's a queuing problem. And that's why I say I'm not going to add any more traffic to that intersection than what's contemplated in our bylaw. I can't do that in good conscience unless we can address those issues. So
We were of the understanding that if we made these improvements and we drastically improved the traffic and the queuing, that our project looked pretty good going forward.
we need to see whether our traffic peer review agrees.
Okay, that's fair enough.
And it's more than just the math. That's my point. It's more than just the math.
Well, I would hope
We can
that,
already tell you, your peer reviews, your traffic engineers already said that it's gonna increase the quality of that from, what was it, E, almost F to C.
if we don't make the improvements, correct.
Right, but that's strictly a math exercise. That's strictly a math exercise. The reality is something different. That's what, we need, we need peer review to really to look at.
Fair enough.
Brian?
Right, yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
Well, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no. So on the same point, and Mr. Chair, you did a better job explaining that question than I obviously did, because that was the grading I was talking about, and we got into the kind of the slope of the hill and stuff like that. But I thought in the last meeting where we landed was that there was a way to look at that intersection and give it a grade that took into account some of those less than ideal circumstances. And I think if we can do that, if we can get to a grade for that intersection that takes into account what reality is now and what reality would be with the improvements, then I get very comfortable increasing the density above what the zoning would allow, because it's a net improvement, or at least we're not making things worse. And so, yeah, none of us are, in the room are traffic experts. I don't know if that type of analysis is possible, but if it is, that's what I want to see is, kind of in reality, not the ideal scenario that Mr. McCusker talked about, and that we talked about at the last meeting, that's driven just by the math. But, the realistic view of what that intersection looks like today and what it would look like with the improvements, what the grade for those intersections would be, and how does it change? I think we need that information, or at least a better way to appreciate those changes.
So to your point, the current existing conditions do factor into that equation. So the fact that it's a angled intersection on a hill, bad site, that sort of stuff, that does factor into it, because that's your starting point, right? So they've done counts and they've done analysis today, but as far as what it will be like in the future by adding a lane and adding traffic, et cetera, that's strictly a math exercise. And I'm not so sure that really has any way to take into account that continued. So it's still on an angle, it's still on a hill, it's still got the difficult site. So that part, I don't think that really is taken into the account when you extrapolate out with the new volumes. And that's really what we need a good analysis from the traffic engineers on to really understand that.
I think there was also two other gaps of information on this, is that I don't think they have counts for the queuing study. I thought the queuing study was based upon theoretical numbers, and we had actually asked for counts. We actually, I think, asked twice for you guys to go out there and put ATR strips on.
And they're in the process of doing that. He was reaching out to his
So that would give us
subcontractor.
actual numbers of traffic actually queuing up at the intersection, someone else, actually 2 or 3 people in the audience raised points about the UPS facility going online and new development at Institute Drive that may not be accounted for in the queuing study, because the queuing study again was theoretical and not actual.
Yep.
So I think there needs to be more work to get to where Brian wants to be, and other members. There needs to be better data to be able to say, okay, this is what we have, this is the current problem, and this is how your improvements are going to fix it.
We're on the assumption that our traffic people had visited the site and your traffic people visited the site, but we'll verify that and make sure that that's happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea that actual counts weren't done, that I think has been discussed. I know it's been discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
Can I throw a couple cents in?
sure.
On this intersection, I'm hearing about the queuing and the level of service and reducing the queuing, and that's one thing. The angle, the downgrade and the horizontal angle, I think speak more so to safety, which can't be quantified with numbers. And I hear what's being brought forward, and I was very encouraged to hear that the either the Housing Trust or the Housing Authority or Livable Communities, whatever they call themselves now instead of DHCD, is on board. The photographs I brought here tonight were to show the board that moving that utility pole is a pretty daunting task. It can be done, but moving the pole over the Housing Authority property results in what would be the equivalent of aerial trespass for the power line, overhead power line, going up Snow Road. So the easement might have to speak to that if the utility companies are willing to go over the property with an easement underneath. But that, listening to the discussion tonight, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at the grades, I'm looking at the horizontal layout, and perhaps leaving the pole in place and having a right turn lane on the other side of the pole, but maintaining the 2 lanes that exist now in their condition might be an option. I was looking at trying to square it up, and as you go north on Worcester Street, at some point very quickly, the grade starts going down, and the Snow Road approach would be shortened, which would only steepen the grades at the Snow Road approach to the intersection. I'm just trying to point out there's a lot of variables, but I'd like to think that the traffic people will look at, maybe it makes sense to put that right turn lane on the other side of the pole and the other 2 lanes in the configuration they have. With a little luck, maybe they can do better, but I don't think so, because the right of way is not much wider. And so I wanted to share that with the board. I think it's worth exploring rather than keeping all 3 lanes together and moving them as a group.
Jeff, I think my assumption was that because there's a slope on the, if you pull up that, can you pull up that street view again of the Housing Authority land? Because that slope is pretty steep where the gravel is.
It is.
And so I'm assuming that to do all this work would require a significant carving into that land, right? Because you can't have Snow Road coming in at a steep slope into Worcester Street. You'd have to graduate it, and then you'd probably
You want to be up Snow Road or on Worcester Street? You want to look down?
on Worcester Street. Yeah, go over on Worcester Street. Yeah, that way.
Yep. And you're right, it's a steep grade. I'm not envisioning that these plans put before the board for the offsite improvements contemplating lowering the grade of Snow Road.
But to do the squaring, if you're going to put the right turn lane on the right side of the utility pole, you might need to grade that and maybe do a little wall or something.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
But again, it's state property, which actually is better than it is if it was private property, because at least you have an actor, especially a DHCD, who loves 40B. You go to them and you say, look, we want to do a 40B project, but the zoning board is concerned about safety. It's a win-win.
Yeah, the only thing is, as we go further up the hill, we have the driveway, Maxwell driveway, that we have to accommodate, so we can't adjust that grade, so we really have between Maxwell Drive and Route 122 to work with, and like everyone has said here, as we move that road further north, we have more slope to deal with. So we will certainly look at it, but just from an outlook, you know, I question mark whether it'll work, but we will look at it.
Look, that's all we can ask is that you look at it. You come
absolutely.
back and say,
We'll look
it
at
can't
it.
be done. All right, at least now we know.
We look at everything you say. We may not go to every neighbor and do everything, but we looked at it, but we'll look at it.
Just to make you aware, the Snow Road from Maxwell Drive down to Worcester Street runs about 7 to 8%. So it's pretty steep for an
Yeah.
approach to an intersection. It's and you'd be chasing it way up the hill if to try to make that approach.
That's part of the problem.
That's right. That's right.
But entering Maxwell Drive, you go down.
Back down.
So that Maxwell Drive driveway could be cut down somewhat.
But then you get the abutters driveways just after it. You got to tie into as well. I'm not saying it can't be done,
Right.
but it's just
All right, somebody in the audience wanted to speak, ma'am?
Lydia Bogart, 8 Bernard Road. That's the little red house up behind Mike's Mobile. I've been there 53 years. I invite you to come to Snow Road someday when the water district is flushing the hydrants. And you'll watch the water go across Snow Road, across Worcester Street, and into the swamp that's next to 103 Worcester Street.
What, sorry, what's 103 Worcester Street?
That's the dentist office.
Okay.
A while back, before I get into a conversation about the intersection, a while back at a hearing, I suggested that you folks pull the files for Country Plaza when Stop and Shop moved in. They did extensive millions of dollars worth of stormwater work because they knew, among other things, they were almost on top of the wellhead. One of the things I can promise your probable residents at this development is that they will be awake all night unless you're going to plant trees that are in excess of 30 feet. I was told when the Stop and Shop project came in that I would never see the lights. I can walk to any room in my house at any time of the night without flicking on a light. A lot of those trees have died. The lights are now on 24/7. I don't know if your reports reflect that or not. But they are, the water's pretty well contained. I don't know what it'll look like tomorrow morning, but you'll probably have pollywogs in the drive-through lane at Savers. Because that wetland is getting very, very full. That wooden fence that curves around the side of CVS, that was put in there after the fact because there was actually a curb cut there. And when they started to have problems, the PD went down and talked to Country Plaza, and they had to take out the little curb cut, put in the stairs and the riprap and the fence. That's 20 years ago.
You're
Maybe.
talking CVS or Stop and Shop?
Stop and Shop, but when they expanded and Stop and Shop came in, they did this whole big plan.
I don't ever remember the curb cut being there, but,
Yeah.
okay.
What else about Stop and Shop and the trees and the drainage? That you pretty much know about. This intersection, you look at this intersection as though it is comprised of 122 North and South and Snow Road. There is also Harris Road, the entrance to CVS, and the entrance to Mike's. You're actually looking at 5 roads of traffic feeding into this one intersection. To put a passing lane, I hope DOT laughs you out of the room, because they're not going to be happy about this. And not for nothing, in addition to the fact that I've lived in this neighborhood for 53 years, I also used to be a member of the ZBA. And I think at that point in time, which of course was prior to 40B, the ZBA made decisions a lot more quickly. And I have lost track of where this safe harbor clock is. So I will conclude my comments for tonight and urge you to keep looking at that intersection before somebody has a very serious accident. The fender benders, they might not bother to call the PD. They'll pull into Mike's, they'll pull into CVS, but they do happen. And this evening, in the rain, on my way here, I had to go north before I came in here. There were cars coming both north and south, and one coming Snow Road, and I had to sit there waiting. So if you think there's any point in time other than maybe 4 a.m. that there's no traffic at that intersection, you are unquestionably wrong. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
Hi, Tammy McClure, 24 Suzanne. I just want to point out that I'm actually a relatively tall woman. I'm almost 5'10", and I drive a minivan. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I sit kind of high up. But when I go to take a left-hand turn on a Snow Road, I'm leaning forward, trying to see, and God forbid if I have a passenger, but trying to see. Now, if you're going to put a right turn only, there's not going to be just cars coming on the right turn. So you're going to have another SUV. There's no way that I'm going to see. And again, tall person in a relatively tall car. I can't imagine someone in a sedan that's shorter. They're definitely not going to see. So not having like that T shape is really going to cause problems. So in theory, it sounds nice to have a right turn only, but then the people trying to take a left are not going to be able to take a left like ever if there's someone in the right lane. And also I'd like to point out too, yesterday when I was pulling out, I was taking a left-hand turn and someone from Mike's came flying out and made me like stop in the like halfway in the middle of the section. So yes, it is not just 1 or 2 streets. It's a lot coming in. So and also when we talked about the traffic study, I thought we were talking about also having the mileage, like the speed that was supposed to be done. I thought that they had said that they were going to do that so that because we understood, you know, you're supposed to do 25, 30, but we know that's not happening because we live there and see it all the time. And then one other thing I wanted to point out is your Lamborghini of a trash compactor. It doesn't account for all the liquid drainage, and that is literally right next to our water well. So I'm curious how that's going to be handled because it's obviously not going to be water. It's going to be chemicals and whatnot, which I did look it up, by the way, so it does say that it just, the liquid just goes into, out. So there's no, like, place for it. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
There is a question online.
We'll finish up in here first, and then we'll go online.
I'm Judy Valentine from.
Wait, you got to say that when you get to the mic.
Sorry. I'm Judy Valentine from 19 Suzanne. I've been waiting for a long time. I've been to all of these meetings, and I'm still waiting for an hydrologist to do a report, because, again, I'm also concerned about the wellhead. And I'm glad that it's mitigating some of the runoff, although it's going to be the basin's going to be right in back of my house. But it also goes into a vernal pool, and it goes into the wetlands, and they end up in the well. So I'm more concerned about the water. I think the traffic study is very, very important, but right now I'm really worried about that.
So Graves Engineering is going to peer review the stormwater design
I
and
hear
how that's handled.
yes, but
And they already have to the extent they can, based on what's been provided.
but I'm talking about the density of the housing to the wellhead and the well. Like, what is the effect of
I
it?
think there's a hydrology component to it that, and civil engineers, I mean, I think Jeff, it focuses on the drainage structures.
To the actual-
And then there's
development.
this hydrogeologist who would then model where that water goes eventually, so it'll go, she's correct, it goes into the wetlands hydraulically connected to a stream that is connected to the well.
Because as far as I know, when I moved there, they said it was a gravel pit. And gravel pits are porous. And so that doesn't seem like a great place to have a lot of runoff necessarily. Especially when it's near the wetlands, it's near a vernal pool. In particular, the drainage pit is going to be there.
Is the vernal pool hasn't been certified yet? Is that
It's not certified. There is one that's a little bit further deeper. But for all intents and purposes, I know it's not certified, but I've been watching it. I've been there for 25 years, and it is a vernal pool. It just hasn't been certified. And it is definitely near the wetlands.
So, at what point, and I guess I'm trying to understand under, it's not so much what authority, but at what point should we be worried about the hydrology like that? And I get that the well is right there, but, you know, let's be honest. I mean, you know, my house miles away from, you know, sits on top of an aquifer that basically feeds into the well. I mean, where or when do we get involved here? As a matter of fact, something close to the well may be less impactful to the actual, depending on, again, we don't know, depending on how the aquifer itself that it's feeding off of is fed. I mean,
Well, that's a question of exactly the hydraulic connection from
right.
the stormwater recharge and the well. And I think, and I did run this by Scott Horsley, who we've used in the past.
Yep.
And he agrees that there's most likely a hydraulic connection from their infiltration systems, which it's not just one. There's one next to the wetland. There's also several other scattered subsurface infiltration structures, I believe, Caltech units.
For the roof.
Yep. and those are all, I think, going to be hydraulically, again, it's moving in that direction. If you did a groundwater contour map, I think you'd see that the groundwater is all moving in the direction of the well. Or it's moving in the direction of the wetland, but that stream feeds the well. So for this project, it's more sensitive because it's so close. We've had other projects where we've actually looked at this where you're in a zone 2, which is like as what you described, it's not as concerning. This to me is very concerning that it is so close. And there are technologies in stormwater systems that take out contaminants. You know, your suspended solids are coming out, but not everything comes out. And road runoff contains metals and hydrocarbons and stuff that gets washed through in storms, gets washed into wetlands. And it's not perfect. So there's always a risk of contamination. There's things to mitigate it. There's a lot of things that, you know, Jeff is going to advise. You know, we did on the other project, was it Pleasant Street, where we required more dispersed or not so much centralized infiltration. We spread it out. This is very centralized. You know, I think, and we'll hear from Jeff, but I think he's going to say that you're going to have a lot of this water going into that corner of the property that's going to then go right into the wetland.
Yeah.
It's not
The only thing I've seen is a 2-paragraph okay by the water department. And that's all I've seen. And to me, that's not proof.
Doesn't that tell you something, though, if they're not concerned about it?
No, because there's been a lot of like heavy manganese and things like that we're in our water showing up. I think they're very good at like repairing things and things like that, but I don't know how much they know about the science of water.
It's kind of scary.
Well, I think so. I think so.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Anything else, ma'am?
Nope, that's it. Thank
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, you asked about, we talked about, impacts from the stormwater and so forth. Town of Grafton zoning bylaw does have the Water Supply Protection Overlay District, which this falls within.
Sure.
With respect to density of development, it doesn't speak to numbers of persons, number of dwelling units, but it does speak to amount of impervious area for one of those things that I'm certainly looking at. And we had as well as the other 40Bs that were within the Water Supply Overlay District. And quality is also important. Certain things are prohibited in the zoning bylaw, but it's very generic when it comes to uses. More industrial type uses are prohibited. And lastly, Mass DEP, second to lastly, Mass DEP does have the stormwater standards to speak to both quantity of runoff and quality of runoff. Well, when I look at quantity of runoff, the hydrology calculations, I also use that to infer what's being recharged in the ground. That helps me with the water supply overlay district. And now the last point, and the town under local stormwater regulations do require more treatment and above and beyond what Mass DEP requires, and that's the purview of this board, because it is a local regulation. I'll be reviewing against those regulations as well.
You know, I remember, I think it was the very first night, I did make a statement along the lines of our expectation is gonna be similar to what happened on Pleasant Street, where our expectation is that you're gonna go above and beyond what stormwater requirements are. You know, as far as doing a I can never say the word, study, you know, I think we all should just run on the assumption that there is a direct connection from the wetland that's right there to, you know, the source for that well. And then treat our water and do things accordingly. And I think I said to you at the time, Jeff, that you said some things on Pleasant Street for how they could better treat the water, and they did. And my expectation is that you will say those things again, considering the location that we're at. So, you know, I don't know that we necessarily need to do a study. I think the applicant should just be running under the assumption that there is a direct connection. It is a well that feeds the rest of the town, and that, you know, you've got to do everything in your power to treat that water and do the right things to protect the well. You have to. If you're going to do the bare minimum, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, there's a direct connection from the soils underlying the site to the well.
Yeah.
A wetland may or may not. It may be hydraulically connected to the groundwater. It may not. It may be a confining layer that created that wetland, which slows the water flow down out of the wetland. But places that are non-wetlands are more pervious from the top down. So,
good point.
We agree with everything you said, and we believe that we have met those standards, and Jeff will know that after he does his analysis.
There's an analogy to Title V. If you have a house and you don't have public water or sewer, you have a septic system and a private well, there's a lot of regulations in terms of how close that well can be to the septic. And ideally, you're putting the septic down gradient from the well so that it's not up gradient. In this circumstance, you have a pollution source that's up gradient, not down gradient, but up gradient to the well. If it was reversed, we wouldn't have this problem. But the problem is it's all going in that, we assume it's all going in that direction. So,
it's in the zone too, so the groundwater is going in the direction of the wells during 180 days of drought with pumping at the approved yield.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just another little quick point, and it sounds kind of funny, but it's not, but the density is relevant because if you're gonna have dogs poop. And this is actually a real concern. I mean, unless we're gonna be policing, you've got this huge 200-foot buffer, right? I imagine residents are gonna be walking their dogs back there. And unless you've got people picking up dog poop or policing that, that's another source of pollution.
That's not a problem,
We
Dan,
will be policing
Okay,
that.
not a
We do
problem.
dog
because we do
DNA.
police it.
How do you pick up dog pee?
We do DNA on
Every
the
dog
dogs.
has to submit DNA,
It's part of the entry when
and
they
you're
move there.
fined if we find your dog's poop.
No, but if they're peeing,
If they're
how
out
do
in
you
the
pick
woods,
that up?
That's what they're talking about,
if you're out in the woods, you're not going to go out in the woods looking.
No.
No, and our residents don't go out in the woods either. They have the dog, that's why we have a dog park. We accommodate that. And we recognize that all the water's connected, and all water goes into a wetland somewhere. Water everywhere, right? Where does it go? All the water goes in the wetland. No,
I can tell you, my
You know
dog
this.
goes in the woods because I don't have to pick it up off the lawn. If I had a choice of being a dog
and
in
we'd
the
have
woods.
competition. And there are people that do that, but they're the exception. They're not the rule.
And just a closing statement on what Steve or John just said, that they comply with the requirements. That's not the end of the story. Yes, they may comply with the state stormwater standards and the state stormwater handbook, but that isn't the end of the story. You can comply with those requirements and still be a problem for the zone one. And again, it comes down to really modeling it through software or other means to see how much pollution can we expect to be in the stormwater that's not going to get attenuated through the stormwater systems, through the storm scepters and everything else, how much of it's gonna still get into that wetland or get into the groundwater from this project? And then, how quickly is it gonna travel to the zone one? Is it gonna get attenuated through the soils at all? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But all of this is studies that the stormwater handbook doesn't even get into. And this is very relevant to your town's concerns.
So we've heard all these conversations in the past, and John has done a terrific job of addressing that, as Jeff will find out when he runs his numbers, that we have not done the minimum, we've far exceeded the minimum. And you will find that out when Jeff does his work on that, so we heard you, and we did it.
What about the liquid waste associated with the trash compactor?
I'm pretty sure it's a self-contained unit. I don't think there will be
I
any
think
liquid
that
waste.
the
yeah.
unit, they don't, and because when I was doing my research on it, they don't, it's a whole unit, they take the whole unit out.
The whole unit leaves.
The whole unit leaves, so it's not like they're peeling off part of it and, they're letting liquid or anything
It's a
else spill out.
self-contained
It's a
unit.
self-contained unit.
Also,
The unit gets swapped out.
We have dumpsters on the job, and they're open top, and when it rains a lot, they get flooded out. When they come pick it up, they pick it up, and the water's running down through the back of that. These are self-contained. We don't get rainwater in them. They're self-contained. So
I've
we don't-
seen, the backs of them are wide open. They have a cover over them, but the backs are open. I don't see why water couldn't
No,
flow.
this is
No, it has a
self-contained all the way
doghouse
around.
on the end of it, and there's an opening to throw your trash in, but there's no opening on
You
top.
slide a door, you throw your trash in, you close the door. This is,
No,
there's a cover over the
the
front.
compactor, the unit that connects to the compactor gets hauled away. What does the compactor connect to? A hole in the side of it.
No, this particular unit's all one piece.
So
When
the
they change it up,
compactor leaves too?
The whole thing.
So
whole
they
unit.
literally are unplugging the compactor?
Correct.
Yeah, not the part that compacts, but all the storage.
Well, no, the part that
No, the whole
compact
thing?
connects
Take
to,
it- No, they take it from the compactor end.
so the compactor leaves and a different compactor comes in.
Correct.
It's on wheels if you look at the picture.
Yeah,
The whole thing
thing.
comes up.
And it-
So the-
Compactor goes away?
correct. We were
Yeah.
actually shocked to see that. Because
So,
we
so,
actually
that, so
looked at
somebody's
that.
gotta go out there and actually, there's gotta be a quick connect to
I'm sure
unplug
of
it?
Yeah, must be. So him and I looked at that when we were designing it, when we took into consideration your comments of moving it and where we would put it and
Because, yeah, because
how we would
part of
load
it, I was,
unload it.
when we were looking at it, we're like, well, okay, and I was thinking the same way you have the compaction unit.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, which way do you have the truck come in? Which side does it need to
much
come
length do you
in?
need?
Because if you have the compaction unit, you would assume it want to come in from
The back.
the backside. So we're looking at, well, okay, how do we angle this? How do we make sure the whole unit goes? Which I was surprised
We've
at
got the
that too.
information, we can look at it too.
Okay.
There's something in the information about 34, 31 gallons of liquid, and I took that to be liquid coming from the waste, not liquid hydraulic fluid. I didn't read that in detail, but I just buzzed it real quick to get an understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah. So from all of our research on this unit, the whole unit goes. So it's not like they're disconnecting and all of a sudden everything's spilling onto the ground and going into the catch basin.
It's far cleaner and better than having dumpsters all throughout the site.
This woman's been standing, waiting to speak.
Well, I don't know if she wants to add, she did the research on the compact. So. while you're talking
Tammy
about
McClure, 24 Suzanne. No, I just was Googling it when you discussed it, and it does say that it does drain the excess liquid to reduce the payload weight and hauling costs. So,
There you go.
Question is, where does it go?
They
On
might,
the ground.
they might have a plug at the bottom. I know a lot of the open tops used to have a plug at the bottom, and they not have it in, of course. So I
So-
don't know if they do that with the compactors.
Oh, I mean, your own documentation says they drain it to save,
Well, I'll look into
tipping
it.
fees.
yes.
We'll confirm that.
Well,
And just one question about that though. If you do say that you can plug it up and you're going to take that liquid away, what kind of penalty would there be if you don't do that and you
Right.
just let the liquid? Like, I want to make sure that there is actual consequences if you don't follow through with what you're saying.
Yeah, you know, and we need to, we need to take care of these things up front, cause all of those sorts of consequences are next to impossible to
So let
enforce.
me say this. If it's gonna be sitting there for 2 weeks, we're not gonna want the liquid going to the ground. It's gonna be a problem for us if we get trash liquid oozing onto the ground for 2 weeks between pickups.
We're right there, so if it's leaking on the ground, it's gonna affect us, and we don't like that, and we're not gonna tolerate it
Correct.
any more than you would on your driveway next to your house.
But this is on the property line and it's going
Right.
downhill towards Stop and Shop.
No, it's not.
In a curb.
Not
know,
too
against
far
the
from the
curb.
zone one of the
We're
public
curb
water
in there.
supply.
Right.
Either way,
You know,
I'll follow
a
up
curb
with
to a storm drain that's right nearby.
I'll
All
follow up
right,
with the
man, you've been
vendors,
waiting,
the
please,
options
come
are.
on up.
We'll get back to you more with that.
Hello, Wendy Allen, 8 Frankie Lane. Okay, couple things that we touched on. That vernal pool that has not been certified yet, that's come up multiple times. The Conservation Commission, I believe, said there was endangered wood turtles there, so that also needs to be investigated. The playground, we did talk about people in the neighborhood using it. A lot of times kids hang out on those stairs at CVS, so I was kind of envisioning them also going to that playground. So if we can do one inside, one outside maybe, but that was something that we had talked about. And then as far as children, I don't know where the other places are, but Grafton Public Schools are amazing. So people move to this town to put their kids in schools. They absolutely will be kids in this place. There's just no question about it. And then I still have concerns about deliveries and stuff because people do Instacart, DoorDash. Like, where are those supposed to go? Like, there needs to be a place in front of each unit for them to deliver this. Like, I do Walmart Plus for my groceries. Super excited, love it. But they deliver them right where I say. Like, I'm not going to leave my, are you going to have refrigeration units at the clubhouse? Like, how are they going to leave your groceries at the clubhouse? Like, I don't understand how that's going to work. So that's just like a small factor, but like off the top of my head in reality. And then, so this is actually really interesting because the house that's there right now has, if Zillow's right, it's 1,144 square feet. And then, so that's smaller than the second size proposed unit at 1,296 square feet. How many cars are at the house right now? At the house on 14 Snow Road? You guys check your properties. I can tell you when they moved in because I saw the moving truck, and we can also talk about that. The size of the moving truck for that size house. Okay, this is on my phone. You can see that from there. It is there's like a second part to that. So this is what we're talking about for a house that's like on the property currently and smaller. And there are 2 trucks and an SUV. The 2 trucks park on the grass and the SUV parks in the lot. Currently, right now, that's a smaller unit than the second proposed size.
That house is gonna be raised, so I don't see why that house is relevant.
It's relevant to people that will be living there, though. Like, you're telling us less than 2 spaces. There's 3 people parked there right now.
We're raising that house.
But that has nothing to do with it. It's just perspective of
No,
how
but-
many people will park.
But this board, I think, is probably better than most ZBAs about trying to maintain that level of parking, and we're pushing it. We
Yeah,
get it.
that's
And
that's
we
my
agree.
thought on the parking.
I can point you to a number of multifamilies in town that have terrible amounts of parking, and they look awful. It's a problem.
Yeah, because
So I
right
think
there,
we
people
have a
park.
pretty good track record in that regard.
Okay, good. So that was one of my concerns with that. And then I definitely think don't knock on our doors. People complain about that all the time. Go onto any town site, you will see so-and-so's knocking on my door. Who's that? Set up a meeting, send us a letter, set up a meeting, because that clearly is what we've asked for multiple times. And
Where you
and
live,
then
ma'am? I'll make sure I don't knock on your door. What number?
8 Frankie Lane. Don't knock on any of our doors, because as soon as someone starts knocking on a door in the neighborhood, it goes all across our Facebook site, and people say, "Who is knocking on the doors?"
Okay.
Nobody likes that.
We won't knock on your door.
And then the traffic study that we've talked about 1,000 times. I have the same concerns as everybody else. You cannot see. I have a 16-year-old driver, a 19-year-old driver. Like, I'm literally terrified for them to take those turns. It's hard enough for me. But I thought that this meeting we were having a traffic study expert, because we've said multiple times, or the board has said, if this cannot be fixed, then we cannot move forward. We have to stay with what is safe for that intersection. Like, this is what we thought was happening.
Let's
at
just
this meeting.
clarify that point. This member has said, I'm not comfortable putting more traffic in there. The board hasn't said anything.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's definitely, but
I'm just
but
one.
true. But it's a point that's been raised, though, and we've raised the point. You've raised the point. But we thought that this meeting we were getting actual traffic study
Yeah,
data.
and you're not because of the redesign of the intersection, and then, now, we just got that a week ago, so our traffic peer review hasn't had a chance to look at it. Hopefully, when we get to the next meeting, we'll have more information.
And then they'll
I
do
wi-
the
I wish
strips.
this whole process was cut and dry the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's really not, and
Okay.
you're learning that in real time, but,
It's difficult. I don't know how you guys do it. And then, but it's actually interesting because the housing authority, was that a public meeting?
It was.
Because I can't find anything about it posted that there was a public meeting because
You'd have to go on the housing authority.
I did.
It's
I went on
not
the website.
affordable housing, it's the Grafton
No, housing authority. Yeah, yeah. They originally
Yeah.
said housing. Like
trust.
it's
No, it's the housing.
yeah.
authority.
Lisa and Jack.
Housing
I know
authority,
exactly what you're talking about. I didn't
Yeah,
see
you'd
anything
have to
on
check with them and see where they post their stuff. I
Okay.
honestly don't. They're supposed to post it like the rest of us do. I have no idea.
Because basically you went off of an opinion of people that don't live there. Like then you should go off the opinions of people that do live there. And we're telling you that we think it's not safe to add a turning lane to the right unless you completely square that out and make it so you can see around the corner. I mean, you basically gave opinions of people, so there's our opinions. Multiple people said they don't think it's safe. So
I don't think the housing authority said it was safe. I think they just said they would work with them.
he said something about they said that they approved it or something
I
like that.
think they were just saying they
They
would
were on
work with
board.
them to do the improvements.
That's correct.
I don't think they're making opinions about the safety.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. So somebody was online?
Yes, there's a question online. Our understanding is the town has made other considerations to get to safe harbor status. Why is the town still entertaining this development?
Because we can and we should.
Okay.
Who asked that question? That should be in the record.
It just says JW iPhone.
Okay.
Wasn't me.
That's right, he's JW.
JW.
I didn't put that down.
I've got a question. Well,
Go ahead.
two. One is minuscule on the grading plan, building number 1. Does the eaves truss on that go into that thing next door? There's no line. There's no line showing it into the into the chambers next to it. It doesn't show if that has eaves truss or not, or recharge. Building 1.
Oh, building 1. Okay.
I'm assuming it goes into the chambers that are in between the two buildings, but
It will. It will. It will. There is.
And I'll find out when I look at the hydraulic.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might have been modeled that way and the pipe
Yeah.
wasn't shown on the plans.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I just caught that. All the others were there. My other question is, Jeff handed this out at the end of last meeting. It really wasn't right at the very end of the meeting.
Toward the end, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I forgot to hand it out when I
The,
should have.
the only one that, it's all numbers, it's number 5, the dwelling unit density, square feet. And it says here, 5,500 required per ZBL, zoning board,
Zoning bylaw, yeah.
Bylaw.
zoning bylaw.
In the
And
multifamily section, yes.
they're at half of it. And don't we have,
Right.
don't we have a regulation that came up,
This has come up in multiple
on,
40Bs. We've talked
yeah,
about this a lot.
Pleasant Street and because they would donate, basically making some of the land conservation land, that offset it, because they owned it.
Yep.
So how does that stand with this?
Well, I mean, they can ask for a waiver of that requirement, and we can grant it. I don't think there is no regulation that this board has.
I thought we had,
I mean, there may be what we've done.
I thought we had a number like 3,400 or something, or maybe it was more. It was probably more.
If we do, it's no different than the 2.0 that we strive for parking, right? I mean, that's just something that we do. So,
I don't think we have a standard.
Yeah.
I think we've addressed this in virtually all of our multifamily 40Bs.
Okay.
And
I mean, we looked into the math of it with, I know Pleasant Street.
And Princess Place and all of them.
My recollection was a project like this, which is in a residential zoning district and it's multifamily use. We obviously can't use the single-family residential requirements. It looks, breathes, smells like a multifamily. So this board, and I know I've looked at it, reviewing the other projects, that we take the residential multifamily regulations and apply it to the use when the waiver is requested.
So that's where the 5,500
That's
coming.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And they'll be asking for a waiver of it. And I think generally we grant it not based on strictly a number. I think we make the project as good as we can, and then we grant the waiver that's necessary. I don't think we've ever said, this is our floor, or something like that.
I think we got close to that last time.
In Prentice, we had a negotiation, we had mediation, and
Yeah.
we talked about different numbers, and maybe that's where, I
Yeah.
remember vaguely, like, we said, like, we're gonna waive it from 55, but we're gonna say you need at least 3,000 square feet per unit, or we did that sort of math to.
But in the waivers for, I think it was Pleasant Street, we specifically called out the additional land and showed the calculation both ways.
You're right, we did do
And
that.
included
So
that.
we can look that up.
But I think we did that mostly just to clarify that our waiver, so that somebody didn't turn on, because if we get granted the waiver on the whole thing, then somebody may say, well, it's only this, or vice versa. I thought we were doing that more to clarify, not necessarily saying that this is our floor.
No, but it was not to set a precedent that can be pointed to that, well,
Right.
you approved
We had
whatever the number was.
We had a big discussion on it.
Oh,
I
and
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah.
There are two people with their hands raised that are calling in that would like to speak.
Oh, by all means.
Can you have them give their name and?
Yeah, they should
Yeah.
definitely give a name.
Yep. John, you can talk. Hold on after. Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
John.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I don't know why it says John. This is Jason Williams, 15
Okay.
Suzanne Terrace.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was JW iPhone.
Thank you.
I did post that in there, so sorry, I didn't know that's what
Yeah.
came up.
No,
when
I got it. Sorry.
Yeah. So a few things. So first, just echoing, I drive that intersection multiple times a day, echoing everything that everybody said. It's impossible to pull out of there now. Just today, bringing my kids to school, I waited 3 minutes before it was safe to pull out. Like it was, and then there was probably 8 cars behind me at that point. Adding a right turn lane, it's not going to help anything. I don't even think squaring it up is going to help. Truly, the only fix is a light. I know that is impossible. So I know I'm echoing everything everybody said. It's just not going to work. And adding that many units, that many cars is just going to exacerbate the situation. As far as Safe Harbor, I feel like we have been talking about this project for months and months and months. Lots of concerns. The same concerns have been raised by the residents that this is going to impact the most. Many of them are echoed by many of the ZBA board members. It feels like little's been done by the applicant as far as to address any of these. We keep waiting for these studies. There's no studies. I don't understand why, if we're in Safe Harbor, we can't just kill this project. It doesn't make sense to just continue to waste everybody's time. It doesn't make sense. They're not dropping, the units significantly enough to make any real impact. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating to sit here and listen to the same meeting, the same concerns, the same zero action. I just really think that the ZBA needs to listen to the residents and know that this is not going to work as designed. There's been little to no downsizing. Direct neighbors are going to be impacted significantly. They're getting a lot of lip service, but there's really no follow through. There's no care. So I just want to put it out there. I think I think this needs to be killed. I think the ZBA really needs to listen to the actual residents and not somebody coming in to throw in several hundred units that are going to really, really mess up the traffic, mess up the neighborhoods, water. It's very frustrating.
Thank you. Who else?
Anne Marie Foley. Go ahead, Anne Marie. Anne Marie, oh, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Anne Marie.
Okay, great. Not to reiterate, I appreciate Mr. McCusker's comments regarding water. So some of my concerns, water, hydrology, concerns regarding, of course, the intersection. Someone else in the room brought up the vernal pool. I certainly have concerns about that as well. I will just refer back, sorry, I'm on my phone now, but relative to the lip that we had, I just want to make sure I don't lose you guys as I'm trying to pull this up, but there was, as part of the lip, so Anne Marie Foley, 45 South Street. First of all, I'm just speaking on behalf of myself. On Exhibit A from 2023, I believe it was, my understanding was the extension of the sidewalk was on the project side, from the project all the way down to connect to the small sidewalk that now is currently there from CVS on up. So I heard talk this evening of the sidewalk on the other side, and I agree with someone else that spoke, having people cross over, go down the sidewalk on the right, if you're on Snow Road, and then, you know, crossing again to the left. So my understanding relative to the LIP agreement was the sidewalk per Exhibit A back then was the sidewalk was being extended from the project all the way down to meet the sidewalk on the side of CVS. Additionally, the playground was proposed to the select board relative to the LIP agreement, and it was going to be open to the public, which the assumption would be that it would be maybe bigger than what is being proposed right now. And then lastly, there were walking trails that were also going to be open to the public that were also part of the LIP agreement. And I'm not sure that I see those in the plans at all. And that's all I have, and I will unmute, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anne Marie. I mean, those are good points, and I'm embarrassed to say I completely lost track of those issues as well. So thank you for bringing that forward. I just want to comment a little bit on the prior caller and you know why the ZBA is continuing to move forward here, and we should just kill it and that sort of thing. And I just point, you know, first of all, if other members on the board want to kill it, whatever that means, then, you know, you all need to speak up and say so. I'm just one member. But this particular member, you know, does feel there's also, as I said before, we're responsible to everybody in the town. But also, 40B is responsible for people outside of the town, people who don't have the housing they need. That's why 40B exists. So I think that we have a responsibility to try to make this project as good as we can, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out, and we can make those decisions. And Safe Harbor certainly gives us a lot more power to do so. But I think that we should try to you know, enhance the housing stock in town. I mean, yeah, we're in Safe Harbor, but we're still not at the 10%. So you know, anything we can do to get there, I think we should. But ultimately, if it's not a good project, then I think that we'll make that decision. And I kind of agree with the caller. We're hearing the same things over and over again. I don't feel we're making a lot of progress. I'm not so sure we're getting there, but I think we have to continue to listen.
And I think I've said this at prior meetings that it feels like we discuss the same issues over and over again, and no progress gets made towards addressing those. From the very first meeting, we've raised the issue of density, and it's been a big concern, and I don't think there's been a ton of movement on that. And, you know, there hasn't seemed to be a a big investment in, listening to the feedback from the board. It's, the low hanging fruit, I think, gets talked to, but not the large issues that, in my mind, just make this a non-viable project from where I sit. But with that, we, are entertaining the application, and we'll continue to do that, and as Bill said, try to make this the best project possible, but that may not be possible in this as proposed.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Thanks. This has been a long process, and we've made a lot of changes. We've listened to the board, and we've listened to the abutters, and we've made significant changes to the project. We've modified the density, we've modified the height of the buildings, we've modified the design of buildings, we've modified the parking. If we're generally concerned about the traffic at that intersection with this project and our improvements, unless someone else is going to make those improvements, we are making the traffic work better than it works today with that density. So we're not, I'm not saying we're not impacting, everything impacts everything. All water goes to the wetlands, but this project is by far the best project that's brought before this town. The design is by far the best project that you have in this town. So
I'll say it's the best project for this piece of land.
It is.
Been presented with.
And our density is not high based on the amount of acreage you had. Because, and we know this because our parking works, our amenity works, our clubhouse works, our trash works, our lighting works, our landscape works, it all works. So, to just say, it's too dense, you don't have enough parking, you can't say that. It's too dense, you don't have enough, you can't say that. It's too dense, it's unsafe. I don't think you can say that. But to think that we're going to have zero accidents, they're going to have zero impact, that's not realistic anywhere. We know that. We all know that.
So let's get, what was his name again? Cliff. Let's get Cliff in to say that everything works. I think that's the point we're at.
We have two more raised hands again, too.
So
So I was gonna make a couple more.
I mean, how do others on the board feel about that?
Is that our consultant?
Huh? He'd pay for it.
I mean,
It's peer review.
that's what I mean, for traffic?
No.
No.
Cliff, you weren't on the board for Prentice Place.
No, I wasn't.
So
I was doing my own.
yeah, exactly.
And what bothers me, I had 18 acres, I could have put 400 of these things in there.
I know.
I feel like a fool,
Well,
but I wouldn't do that to my town.
okay, but we digress. No, I mean, Cliff, so everything that the applicant just said, everyone else is questioning. Right? I mean, the applicant just said everything about this is perfect, or it didn't say perfect, it says it's good, it works, it's fine, there's no problems. And it's everyone else around him, everyone else in town is questioning it. So you bring in someone like Cliff Bomer, who is an expert in design issues. He's not looking at it at the level that Jeff looks at it. He's not looking at traffic. He's looking at the overall design and give us an opinion. I mean, does this really work? Does this make sense? And in the case of Prentice Place, he actually made some suggestions that the applicant ran with and made it a heck of a lot better place. But he gave us a lot of good feedback. So, I mean, that's what I'm proposing is we do similar to what we did there. Brian, you were part of that, but I think
I was the tail end of that.
Oh, were you? Okay,
Yeah.
so, all right, so Kay was.
Kay was, yeah.
So I'd like to go in that direction.
Prentice Place came out nice. It's a nice looking development. But do you think it's as nice as our development?
Doesn't matter.
It's not. I can tell you right now.
He keeps
it's not.
saying nice. This isn't about aesthetics.
It's not aesthetics? Aesthetics?
This is not about aesthetics.
Okay,
He keeps
I thought
saying,
we thought
looks
aesthetics were
pretty, this
important.
looks
They are.
nice.
There's
This
a
has
lot
to
more
do
than
with
that.
substantive issues. When I say design, just so you understand what we mean, design doesn't mean the prettiness of the building. The design means internal circulation of traffic when you don't have loading areas in front of buildings, when you're proposing a loading area in front of the clubhouse that's right at the entrance of the project. When you have these townhouses facing towards Snow Road and there's a concern about deliveries. You know, when you don't have a sidewalk that connects this project easily to CVS. Those are the substantive design issues we're talking about, that Cliff can weigh in on. It's not about prettiness, it's not even about density.
Right, I agree.
It's about how this works, it's about the trash compactor being on the property line next to our zone one. It's those types of issues. And there were just two other substantive comments I just wanted to make, Bill, before I lose them. There was the ATR issue, we asked for the ATRs, and again, I mean, the board wants it, right?
Right,
So we've said that now several times. The sight lines, you are supposed to have drawn the sight triangles on the plan, and I do see dashed lines that say sight triangle on them. But I don't think the distance is correct. You said 390 feet, but I took a ruler to your scale, and
That's projected, that's going across our property, but it goes off-site all the way down Snow Road in both directions.
not that geometry. It doesn't. I mean, if you take a ruler, a straight edge, and you continue that line, that's not 390 feet. So, just take a look at it.
But our traffic peer review will also look at that, right? Yeah, okay.
And then also, within the site triangle area, there's not supposed to be any obstructions. But your landscaping plan shows trees and bushes, and I just heard you say there's gonna be a fence. So there needs to be consistency there.
Low profile.
Well, it's gotta be no higher than 2 feet, or two or 3 feet. So I'm not sure what plants you're proposing. It's really hard to read your landscape plan because you don't actually have a key that lines up with the plants. That was actually another comment. Like all these plantings that are in front of the townhouses, like what are those? How do I know? I can see your key in the right hand side, but how do I match that to the key?
We'll make it more
Easier to read.
user friendly.
Okay.
As far as the sidewalk, Dan, you know, we don't have a blank slate here. We have abutters, we have slopes, we have roads already in place, and we're working with that to make a sidewalk work. If we owned that property all the way, we'd have that sidewalk could come right down. If there was enough room, we absolutely would put it right down there, but it doesn't exist. So we're working around all these obstacles here to make what we think is the most viable plan. You know, we could move the road over 10 feet. We could rip down all the houses. Those are not realistic solutions. So we're working.
And then maybe the project isn't realistic.
No,
It's
it
as
is.
simple as that. And,
No, it
and,
is.
and you're here on a lip. If the lip said you're gonna do, if you told the selectmen and the selectmen approved this based on doing a certain amount of sidewalk, and now you're saying you can't do it.
No, we
that
didn't
needs
say
to go
that.
back to the selectmen.
No, we didn't say that. We said that the design can't go across a butter's property. We have to work with it. That sidewalk works.
We
So
just
the fact
heard
that
from the chair of the Board of Selectmen. I don't know if you know who that was, but she was she's the chair, right?
Yes, she is.
Of the select board.
Yes.
She just said that it was their understanding that you would agree to build a sidewalk from your project to CVS on that side of the street.
well, then have the town take it by eminent domain. And we'll build it. We'll build it.
No, that's not how it works.
I don't know that the lip agreement said that would be on that side of the street, but that we would have sidewalk access so you
all
can
right.
get down.
We'll check.
So
We don't need to do it right now, but we'll check. But, you know,
Can we send this back to selectmen to ask them how they would vote if there was no sidewalk to be built on the project side?
well, if the lip, I think you correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but if the lip says that the applicant's gonna do X and they're not doing X, it seems like at that point it needs to go back to the selectmen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can tell you right now, well, let's just say the select board then pulls their approval of the lip. What happens then?
If they pull their approval, then they don't have eligibility to apply for the permit.
So why don't we send it back to them?
Well,
Let's
let's first of all, let's
Well,
look
we
and
have
see
to
what it
look at
says.
the lip.
I'm looking at it right now.
You found it?
Yeah. It's in the,
I knew it was in there, but there's no tabs or anything, so it's hard to find stuff in there. All right,
So process-wise, Bill, on peer review, I can reach out to Cliff tomorrow.
Okay.
To see what his availability is. He's really busy, but I can ask him if he can do us a favor and expedite this.
Okay.
Do you want, so where are we on 53G?
Do we need to get a?
They just gave us, we still have 24,000, or we still have 20,000, they just refilled the peer
And
review
then do you
account.
want a hydrology review? Do you want to pull the trigger on that?
Let's, that just feels like it's something that should come a little bit later if we get to that point. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I mean, you haven't heard from Jeff yet. I think
Right,
it makes sense
exactly.
to get Jeff's input and then we could decide.
I mean, have they really even done stormwater design yet?
Well, they have.
Oh, they have, okay.
But
Yeah, with the revised information that just came in, that's got the level of detail as came with the
Okay.
very first application.
So we need, yeah,
All right, I'll reach out to Cliff.
right.
You want these two people that are, raise their hands?
Yeah, so we already heard from JW. Is there somebody else that we haven't heard from?
Yep.
We'll come back to JW.
Edward iPhone, please identify yourself.
Oh, hi. Sorry, Sid Prisby from 25 Danielle Drive. How are you?
Good, Ed.
First time, long time. So, listen, I appreciate the discussion tonight. You guys have raised a lot of valid points. I've been working in affordable housing as a volunteer for about 16 years now. And I just wanted to chime in with, I think, some of the concerns that, maybe you guys don't hear from people who don't attend these meetings. While the concerns of people in the neighborhood are certainly valid and, they have a right to have their concerns validated, what you don't hear from are the people who are talking to me and who don't know about these meetings and don't show up, that, I hear from a lot of people who are getting a little bit older and are living in, 3,200 square foot colonials that made sense for them to purchase back in 1995, but now they can't maintain. I hear from a lot of people living outside the community who would love to move here. We do have great schools, and or are changing jobs and need to live near Worcester, or their situations change and this would appeal to them. So, while it is important to listen to concerns of people in the neighborhood, there are other people in the community, in this particular community and in the greater Worcester community, that also have needs that need to be serviced. And sometimes density is the way to go. In fact, I'd make the argument that if you want to preserve Grafton's beauty and open space, at some point you're going to need denser development. This community, after all, has seen a 57% increase in the value of single homes and the price of single homes from 2019 to 2024. That's a lot of money. So if you're going to pay $400,000 for a single family back in 2019, that same one's costing you $650 now, $650,000 now, and that's due to a housing shortage. This is one of the most competitive rental markets in the entire country. So this development is important, even though we are in safe harbor. And I would make the argument that even if we got to 10%, things like this ought to still be considered. I challenge you guys to consider, yes, while traffic is important and certainly factors into the quality of life, I don't know how in a community like ours you increase housing without necessarily increasing traffic to make it something that we all have to sort of compromise on and kind of live with. Bill, you and I live off of Pleasant and Providence Road. Every time I take a left onto Providence, I'm looking to my right at, from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock, whatever that angle is. And, I crane my neck doing it. And these are the things we have to live with, because I'm certainly glad that my development is there, because this is where I live. Even though, those sorts of things, impact safety. And, the goal here isn't to create a community of maximum safety, but to create one where everybody can really live together. I guess my last note is I would encourage the developer to stop saying your site's perfect. It's not. Work with the people who are in front of you. They want to see this happen too. And that's your role. Just compromise where you can, get the work done where you can, and get this approved as soon as you can. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And what Mr. Prisby just said is what I was trying to say as well. I mean, that's one of the primary reasons that I continue to try to work this is an acknowledgement of the fact of there's a lot of people who can't be here, who aren't here in town because there's a housing problem, and we need to address that if we can. Ms. Foley just sent me, and I'm sure we have it somewhere, but Exhibit A, which is what the LIP references, and My view on Exhibit A is that it shows a sidewalk with a crosswalk at Maxwell Drive. So I have a feeling that what was presented to the selectmen is what the applicant is proposing. That being said, I will do what I can to get something that's not on my phone, and probably ask Jeff to review it and make sure that the professionals interpret it the same way I'm interpreting it right now. But it sure looks to me like there's a sidewalk. Basically, it's a sidewalk that's there to a crosswalk at Maxwell Drive, and then you can't see it, but presumably the sidewalk continues up. We'll see. And JW, do you have something new to add? Your hand is still up.
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, so Jason Williams again, 15 Suzanne Terrace. I just want to kind of reply to a couple of comments that were made. So Mr. Prisby is purporting that he speaks for many people. However, you don't actually know that to be true. This is a publicly posted meeting that anybody can attend. I have yet to hear anybody except for Ed in this first meeting of many to speak in favor of this, right? So this meeting's there. If all these people want it, they're not coming out to show it. 40B is the responsibility of the entire Commonwealth. That's 351 cities and towns. Grafton has met their obligation. So I don't know that we need to continue to go above and beyond when all of the residents that seemingly care about this are speaking out against it for a number of reasons. None of them have been addressed properly, if at all. So I just really, again, want to have the ZBA listen to the residents that truly do care about this, know that Grafton has met their requirement when it comes to 40B. It is not solely Grafton's responsibility for what the state's requirements are. And just please take that into consideration, because it's really becoming tiring coming to these meetings over and over and over again. The same things get brought up. Nothing gets really done. The applicant says that they're a professional organization, but it sounds like their drawings aren't even done well. So it's frustrating. I'm tired, and I just want this to end.
Yeah, I'm tired too. For the record, we have not met the 10%. We are in safe harbor due to planned production. Sometime in the next couple of years, we will fall out of safe harbor. So
Yeah, but we're in safe harbor now, so so we have met it at this point.
all right, anyone else?
No more hands.
Okay. So at this point, we need to have our traffic peer review. We need to have our engineering peer review, look at what's been submitted. You're going to try and arrange for Cliff to take a look at this as well. I think those are the three biggies. We need another meeting scheduled. What do we think we're looking at? I'm sure, well, Jeff, what do you need for time?
A couple of weeks.
But it would probably need, well,
Does John have the traffic?
He does, yeah. He said he would need more time to review it. Probably a couple weeks.
now we have another meeting scheduled already for like,
June 12th. We have 4 items on that agenda at the moment. All 4 40As. And we are closed on the 19th.
okay.
26?
I'm away on the 26th.
18th?
Fine with me.
Yep, that's fine by me.
You okay on the 18th?
I'm looking right now.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah.
We can do it on a Wednesday.
Yeah, we can.
If that works.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Dan?
Good.
Before we go any
What about
further.
Kay?
I can text her.
Jiffy's out, so he doesn't matter, right?
Right. She has her phone silenced. I don't know. I can call her tomorrow.
We just gotta go with it.
Yeah, I mean,
We can't wait till tomorrow to do the
no,
continuance.
I know, we can't. I know.
Well, we could continue to, the 12th. Why don't we do that? Continue it to the 12th.
What, this?
Yeah. We're not gonna hear any testimony. It'll just be to schedule it when we know,
We can get everybody.
and maybe we'll have a better handle on when Cliff's availability, that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys don't need to show up and just have somebody join us by phone or whatever, or on Teams. And then we'll know, because otherwise, we don't want to lose Kay.
We want to make sure everything's reviewed.
Yeah. So why don't we do it? So the 12th is up? I just said it, right?
Yeah, yeah, we have quite a bit on that night, but yeah, we can put this there and.
There
Well,
should
it'll
just be a
for
schedule.
scheduling.
So, yeah.
Scheduling.
I don't
Yep.
know how to erase this.
All right, then why don't we do that? We'll continue it to the 12th. Before I actually request a motion, is there anything else we need to address in the hearing?
The CMPs.
No, that's in the meeting,
Oh.
in this hearing.
Down on it.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to continue case number
9:10.
910 to, June 12th at 7 PM.
And that's gonna be for
To schedule.
Scheduling only.
And you're gonna hear peer review at that time too? Or-
No,
No,
Just schedule.
just scheduling, because we have at least four 48 cases.
yes,
Okay.
So it'll just be to,
And pencil in the 18th, right?
huh?
Pencil in.
Hey, yeah, pencil in the
pencil
18th.
in the 18th.
Pencil in the 18th.
We need to do this, or wait till the 12th. This is extended another 30
To what,
days.
July 1st?
I don't pencil things in.
Wait till then.
Sure.
All right, so I requested a motion. Did I get it?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so motion made and seconded. Any discussion? So Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Vice Chairman votes yes.
And member on the,
Oh,
Oh, Brian's here.
yes, Brian's here. Mr. Langevin?
Yes.
Thank you. We're continued to, June 12th. And at that time, we will only do scheduling for this case. All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Do you want me to deal with this CMP? Not that I know what I'm doing, so I think the only thing for these construction management plans is we're just supposed to approve them.
Yeah, Travis, can you unmute? Sorry.
Has he been on there the whole time? He's been on there the whole time?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Travis.
Okay, yeah, I was on the entire time. I'm glad to be on this side of it. Starting construction, I'll say that. Happy to go through the construction management plan for each. Just kind of outlines the hours of construction, emergency contacts, how the site will be managed from noise and dust control, staging areas, that sort of thing. Anticipate having all of the staging and stockpiling areas outside of the buffer zone. We did meet with the planning department and conservation, went through this construction management plan for each site. They had no issues and everybody seems to be on board at this point. So happy to talk about specifics if you have questions about the documents themselves and answer any questions.
I don't. The only question I had was that, it's gone through the development review folks here.
It
and
did. We had a
been
team
in the house.
development meeting. Everybody was there. There were a couple questions they had for Travis and Chad, which were answered in the meeting, but there were no hiccups. There were no, anything that stood out. Everybody was fine on both of them.
One question, Travis, on the hours of construction,
Yep.
I think this was in the comprehensive permit. Does this match what's in the permit, do you know?
Correct, it does.
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Okay, perfect.
And they do know that nobody can show up before 7. That's been
Yeah.
reiterated, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that has been reiterated. We'll continue to do so as construction goes along.
So, I probably, because it's two different projects, I probably do two motions. So I understand a motion to accept the construction management plan for the reserve at Pleasant Street. Is that the name of that project? I thought it was
Yes.
something else.
Nope, the reserve at Pleasant Street and the reserve at Misco Hills.
So accept the construction management plan for the reserve at Pleasant Street as submitted.
So moved.
So I motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Miha?
Yes.
Someday you teach me how to say it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Mr. Langevin?
Yes.
Vice Chair votes yes. And motion to accept the construction management plan for the reserve at Misco Hills as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Miha?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Mr. Langevin?
Yes.
And Vice Chair votes yes. And I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Waller.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks. One set of minutes, I believe.
No, there's two. If you want to table them, we can do them on the 12th.
Thank you.
Would love to table.
Everything else.
I would love to table.
All right, so, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Mejia,
Yes.
Langevin.
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. We're adjourned.